All right. So here's the deal. I am live right now. This is to watch the back end of the D'Souza debate. I had a terrible evening, but I would love for a specific friend of mine to come on and help me do this. He may or may not be available right now. So I am going to start the video. And if he's available, I hope he hops in. If he's not available, this might be a slightly short stream. Invitation is in the chat for anybody who wants to hop on. Let's rock and roll this. Okay, let's see. YouTube video sharing platform. I don't think it's been that for years. Do they even have still videos? That was just commercials now. Okay. Anybody want to stream snipe History Valley? All right. What am I writing down? Dinesh. Dinesh versus O'Connor. O'Connor. So I took my dad out for took my dad out for Father's Day after work, and he got nervous while at the restaurant, and then he forgot how to eat a taco. We're Mexican, so that's a weird thing to forget how to do. Then he forgot how to sit back in the car when we left. And then he dozed off. Then he woke back up. Then he was kind of normal. Then I put him to bed. It was not pleasant. So I'm gonna get my little headset. We're gonna have a little fun and see if I can bring my mood up. Let's do that here. Let's add the share screen. There we go. All right. Like I said, I don't know if anyone's going to join on. This could just be me talking to myself. That's fine. I'm going to go get my headset and I'll be right back. Anyone who's watching this tomorrow, I'm so sorry if this is lackluster. What a day. I am now a Mexican eating a tortilla on stream. I am a stereotype right now. Hold on, BS. I'm still getting my headset. I don't have any sound yet. So you can basically say anything. I wouldn't hear you.
All hail BS Centurion.
Okay. Meow. Hey, Frank. Okay. Let's see if it connects.
Hello, are you there?
All right. Connecting. Still connecting. Now it's connecting to something else. What the heck? Come on, connect. There we go.
Are you eating Mexican food on a stream? Mexican.
Yep. I had a shitty fucking evening, dude.
Oh. Well, if it makes you feeling better or worse, I had a great evening because it was Father's Day, and now I'm so stuffed after my meal that I might puke on the stream.
I tried to do that with my dad, and he had an episode while at the restaurant, which sucked.
That does sound like it sucks.
On the plus side, I did eat Mexican food tonight, so now I'm like Popeye. I got superpowers. I can build a wall in less than 5 minutes.
Yay.
So, what'd you think of the Dinesh? I'm sure you saw it, or at least saw pieces of it. What did you think of this debate?
It was the worst debate I've seen in a long time. it was a hot mess of garbage, and I'm glad I'm an atheist after that one because he got smacked down. Dinesh got smacked down so hard.
I don't know if you've noticed, but if you look for a commentary on it, it's not even atheists. Just no atheist is touching this one. It's just Christians saying how terrible this was.
Yeah, we're just being humble and just like like be quiet about it and just let everybody else observe and just take it in for themselves.
The only atheist I've seen say anything serious about it was Pine Creek, and it was mostly just to laugh about it.
Yeah, that's where I saw most of it too. I didn't watch the actual debate, but what I saw on Pine Creeks was just like, oh my god, what the hell's happening here? But Alex handled himself good, and a lot of people were saying that they were disappointed that Alex was being aggressive in his comments. But I felt the opposite. I think it's nice once in a while for the nice guys to show their teeth, so people don't think that they're pushovers.
Well, I don't even think that he was being nice. He was literally arguing through the arguments against him. That, like, I don't know that he was playing this game, but it felt like he was trying to help Dinesh by getting him back on the word track that he was supposed to be on. Because Dinesh would just start off with one argument and then switch to a counter argument that's the opposite of the argument that he was using. So he was refuting himself in his own statement of why the Bible works. And a lot of people who've watched my review aren't getting that. I'm like, I'm not saying that every single one of Dinesh's argument were bad. Some of them are good arguments, but he would then in the middle of it take another argument that countered the first one. He has to pick one. He can't have like 5 different apologetical starters and not get to any conclusion. It was terrible. I don't.
Well, I think why he got Alex got the way he was too, because there was a lot of gish galloping from Dinesh, and then it like you could tell at a certain point in the interview he wasn't even looking at Alex. It was just he was just looking at the audience, and then Alex is trying to like have a conversation, and he's not even like acknowledging him because I think he knew how bad he was doing in his head, and the shame was getting to him.
It's like a gish gallop when you ask too many questions. I forget what that one's called, but Alex does that in the beginning. Alex does that to Dinesh. So you think there's going to be some back and forth? No, it's just Dinesh for 2 hours fucking himself in the ass. Like, it's so bad.
Yeah, and then like Alex is trying to jump and be like, "Let me fuck you in the ass too. So, give me a chance." Like, and so like
when I literally, and I don't know if you saw this part, Alex throws him a lifeline and tells him the refutation for what he's saying, for the questions that he's asking, and he gives it to Dinesh, and then Dinesh denies the refutation.
He argues with him about it. Like,
yeah,
he's like, "Here's a lifeline, but no, I don't need your stupid lifeline." It was bad. I don't know why Dinesh has garnered the reputation he has. Like, usually he's pretty bad in whatever these other debates I've seen him in, but this one, I feel like he didn't even study for this one and didn't know who Alex was and just kind of walked in blindly.
No, he didn't know Bible passages. Like, I don't mean like obscure Bible passages. He didn't know the beginning of Genesis.
Yeah, that was a classic. The Sunday 4 thing. He's like, "What?" And this dumbfounded silence. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and hit play. Feel free to interrupt at any time. Whenever, if you want to do what me and, what's her name, Lisa, do sometimes, just mute it whenever you want to speak. I'll see the speaker come off, and I'll go ahead and pause it for you.
I'll be staying on mute, so.
Yeah. Oh, I'm hitting the wrong thing. Oh, it doesn't have sound.
I know how this went down, by the way. And also, you just accused me a second ago of special pleading. I wanted to ask you what it was that I'm specially pleading.
Well, what I'm saying is that what I'm saying is that you have an event.
What I'm saying is that I don't know what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. How come this guy gets to be famous and I don't? I have better reputations than this.
That's what I ask myself every time I see him. Wasn't he on like Oprah or Dr. Phil or one of these big names, and that's how he's kind of been?
Well, I mean,
banner
he
to?
got to debate some of the big atheists back in the day, and I'm like, I remember at the time thinking like, well, maybe he's like some kind of serious dude, but I'm thinking maybe the atheists just wanted someone to beat up on. Like, I don't know. Like, this is just so bad. This is stupidity.
Yeah, I can't even tell what type of Christian he is. As far as when I was telling my wife about him, I think he sounds like a New Ager, but then he like drifts in and out of Christianity, but then goes into like some New Age speak, and then
Well, I mean, if and there's no argument here. He doesn't give an argument, but let's pretend he did give a structured argument. He denies the Old Testament. He somehow denies Yahweh is Jesus, or implies that they're not the same God, or something like that. He argues for that the Jewish writers or our audience were the literalist, and that all Protestants who are literalists now are actually giving a spiritual interpretation. It's like he didn't even know what the words themselves meant. I don't know what religion that is, but it's not Christianity, and it's not any denomination I can think of.
yeah, that's why I was saying New Ager, because like I don't even know. Like when I listen to a New Ager, I don't even know what the words mean half the time they're saying. They're just throwing buzzwords out, like spamming stuff like quantum and stuff, and you're like, oh, ooh, yeah.
Well, I said this in my review. He literally lists every single Christian response to the same question, and he doesn't seem to realize that some of the responses are counter to each other. Like, you're using a Catholic response, you're using a William Lane Craig response, you're using a Randall Rouser, and then you're using Augustine, and then you're using Kant. He fucking goes into Kant at one point, and I'm like, what are you doing? That's not even on the same page.
Yeah, you're theologizing all wrong, bro.
He yesterday he started trying to argue for the literalness of creation based on revelation because it agrees with Aristotle, and I'm like, you do know Aristotle was a pagan. And I was drinking a little too much. I was drinking a little too much, and I started reading from Hesiod's Theogony, where he claims divine revelation is the reason why this is true. And I used Dinesh's exact words to argue for the literal truth of Hesiod, which is how the Greeks understood creation.
They would be again why I feel like he's a New Ager sometimes, like a universalist. There's a little bit of truth in all the religions type of talk. I can use the Bible to also match up with the Stoics and the Greek pantheons, and just do a mishmash and make it all work or whatever.
And this, I'm not joking when I said it. I know I said it as sounded sarcastic in my review, but I think this actually hurt apologetics. Like, I like the Myth guys. There's nothing that they're saying, even though they're hitting hard, that's going to hurt the word of Christianity. Nothing. This guy, I think, did some real damage to the Christian message. For real. Like, I'm not being sarcastic. I think this is going to hurt converts and conversations going forward.
Do you know what the views look like on it? Was it highly viewed? It was on Pangburn, which I know is a bigger platform.
Right now they're at 177,000 views.
That's
sorry, no, that's a sub. Sorry, 231,000.
That's not bad. That's a decent amount. Almost 250,000 people saw it.
I mean, I don't know if you remember, what's the guy's, not Steven Anderson, whatever, the stupid hate preacher. Like, that guy did some damage to Christianity. Is it Steven Anderson?
Oh, which hate preacher? There's so many.
He was a Baptist preacher. He was super anti-gay, and then
Hovind, Anderson. Like,
it's Anderson. There you go.
Anderson was, yeah.
But yeah,
what I'd say with this debate here is, this should be like, if I was a Christian, my battle plan right now would be to use this if I was like teaching at Biola or something,
Okay.
and use this as an example of what not to do
Mm-hmm.
to my students, because Dinesh looks like he hasn't even taken 1 year of apologetics. He's looking like he's fresh and green to the Christian religion altogether. And on the other hand, you have Alex, who's very seasoned at this. You can tell he's anticipating every single argument / counter argument that Dinesh is going to bring up, and he's already like 3 steps ahead.
I was gonna say it looked like Alex's brain actually turned off at one point, and like he wasn't even trying. He was just
It was
like, okay,
Auto
yeah,
mode, yeah.
yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised, because a lot of us watching at home, who are interested in, are thinking the same thing. The only thing that was keeping us on our toes is which fucked off weird way is Dinesh going to take this, because he'll just surprise us with, like you said, jumping from the Stoicist to Kant to Genesis to Revelations, and do it all in one sentence or something.
Thank you, D, for the compliment. A viewer gave us a compliment. When he started going into proving the Bible through Thucydides, I was just like, what? And like, I had to first I have to remember that it was Pericles and not Lycurgus that the story's about. And I'm like, that's like trying to say the funerary speech, which the writer wasn't there for and admits he wasn't there for, is literal history. It's like, you can't defend the Bible this way. You're literally disproving the Bible with your defense. Like, I was so offended and like, oh my, I wanted to shut him up.
Yeah. I think Alex was probably feeling some of that too. I can't believe I'm getting paid for this. This is so easy.
I know he had a conversation with Trent Horn. I know he had a conversation with William Lane Craig, and he had some other big, like huge apologists on, and where they had good, healthy conversations, and there was good pushback. And then he goes to this, and I don't know if you saw the after video, but the after video, they're hanging out together. I would be like, I don't know if I would be pissed or if I would be like hugging Dinesh, like, it's okay. It's okay. Don't worry.
You're consoling him. Put your head on my bosom, sir. Yeah, well, okay. So here's the difference. Like I mentioned, Alex getting some grief from his fans about being aggressive in this video, but the difference is, like with the Craig stuff and other people who are on the channel, those are discussion / interviews. They're not meant to be debate. And so a lot of people, especially with the divine command theory stuff with Craig, like they're like, I can't believe you just sat there and let him say all that bullshit and like blah 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 and didn't push back. And he did push back a little bit, but that wasn't the purpose of that talk. So if you're expecting that, and he's actually in a debate format this time, good on Alex for being more aggressive, because now the format's changed. He's not being the gracious host; he's being the combative. Debater.
There was 2 places where if Dinesh would have just shut up and let Alex reject what he was saying, even if the atheist audience would be like, yeah, right, Alex, it would have looked bad on Alex for not engaging with the points that Dinesh was making. And at least the Christian audience could say, well, look, Dinesh was laying a trap. He was playing stupid. He wasn't being stupid. But no, Dinesh just wouldn't shut the fuck up. Like, it was verbal diarrhea.
Yeah, a lot of it. Speaking of verbal diarrhea, right?
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Let's do this.
Event. These events are described with great precision and a sort of eyewitness presence there. Now, we know in some cases there weren't eyewitnesses, but they're nevertheless described. This is the way it.
Okay, hold on. BS. Let's pretend I'm a Christian. Let's pretend you're an atheist, even though it might be the other way around.
Okay.
Were there eyewitnesses in the Bible? Were the Gospels written by eyewitnesses? Let's see if you can handle this question better than Dinesh. Go on, you beautiful Christian.
They're not. The only eyewitness that you might possibly get credit for is Paul, and that depends on how you
the letters are legit. Yeah.
Or how you classify the Damascus Road experience. It can't obviously be the second coming of Jesus because the world would be over. So it has to be not the bodily resurrected Jesus. It has to be an apparition. And so everybody could claim an apparition visit from Jesus. They do it today. So that's whoop-de-doo.
So the atheists who are watching my videos for some reason, just because I'm a Christian, like you could tell they didn't watch the video. They're like, "Oh, you're just defending Dinesh," and then they were like, "Oh, you're just giving his arguments." And I'm like, "Did you not watch my video? I basically just tore him a new one." But I was thinking to myself, like, okay, with my level of knowledge, like, let's pretend I'm in this game. I would at least try to argue that the original oral tradition stems from one of the original apostles, and that whatever we got that developed through the church or through the school or whatever word you want to call it, through the Christian community that end up developing each individual gospel has portions of either the sayings of Jesus, which we can say is authentic, and is combined with whatever old tradition that community tied into, which, if we believe in we believe in inspiration, which Christians do, that's guided by the Holy Spirit. I think that's a better argument than Dinesh's. Yeah, Luke is really a doctor. The Luke thing, like, I literally shut off when he said Luke is real and Luke is a doctor and a physician. I'm like, you didn't lay any groundwork. You didn't say what church father you got this from, where the Bible's making this claim. Like, you just said, no, it's accepted science and fact that he is real and he is a doctor and he's the writer of Luke. And I'm like, has he not watched YouTube for the last 10 years where we've all been talking about this?
I don't know where he was. He wasn't on YouTube. He wasn't watching yours or my channel. That's for sure.
Well, let me go back to the question I asked you though. What is the correct response? Because I talked over my own question because I'm already frustrated just remembering this fucking conversation that he had, this debate. What is the proper response that he should have given for the authenticity of they're on the Gospels, right? Or they're not on like Old Testament stuff, right?
He's saying that they're recorded eyewitnesses that wrote the
Okay.
gospel, and I said the gospel, the gospel.
The gospel.
So, because you're talking about doctors, anyway. So no, there is not, and that's why I threw up Paul, because it's like, unless you want to classify Paul, but then I would definitely have some rebuttals for your Paul.
Well, how would you counter mine? Saying that it's a development through that there's a strong possibility or probability, I should say, that the original version that this later developed writing is based on is either going to be Q, which is authentic sayings, according to scholarship theories, hypotheses, or it's the original founder of that school, of the Lucian school, which Christians would say is an apostle. So that there is a high probable chance of a direct witness in the background before it actually gets written down 30, 40 years later.
Are you talking just for the Gospel of Luke or all of them?
I'm saying all the gospel. I mean, you can debate, you can date different gospels.
Well, because we have this idea that they all need to stem from one person, but that I have no problem with the oral tradition because that would make the most sense. But
that's what I believe. I believe in the oral tradition. I know that a lot of Christians want to argue that Paul is Paul. I mean, Paul is Paul. Matthew is Matthew, and Mark is Mark, and Luke is Luke. And I don't even think that works if you have them be the apostles, because I don't even think Mark isn't even a direct apostle, right? He's a later.
Yeah, Mark's not, and neither is Luke. Mark's going to be writing on behalf of Peter, according to tradition. Luke is going to be like this super sleuth spy who's doing all this investigating and putting it together like a puzzle. Matthew and John would be the only disciples, but Matthew actually refers to himself in the third person, which makes it very strange. And the fact that he copies like word for word like 80% of Mark, including his own meeting with Jesus, which would be even more strange.
I can, like I said, I can buy into the oral tradition, and that each church that somehow ties into the churches that founded them. So they're going to label Matthew, because for a while they were anonymous and they didn't have any labels to it. So if you're a Matthean church, it would make sense that you would label, or a later compiler would label this as, oh, this is the Gospel of Matthew because it comes from the Matthew tradition. This, compilation comes from the Lucian school, so we're going to label it Luke. This one comes from the Marcion school, the good Marcion. So this is going to be Mark. It makes sense that if that's how you label it, but Dinesh, I don't think, has the balls or the intellect to acknowledge this is pure speculation. I'm speculating that that's what happened because that's what makes sense to me. Do you know?
I don't even know if he's aware of those hypotheses. Like, this is what I'm saying. I am really having a hard time judging how dumb he actually is, because the stuff he's spewing during this debate sounds like first year Biola grad, philosophy bro type stuff, or debate me bro stuff. And it's like, he might as well have just heard from some fundamental that Mark wrote Mark and Luke, and then he's just running with it and never questioning it.
Is there, after the debate bro and after the blood sports and after modern day debate, which is kind of continuing the blood sports but in a lesser degree, is there any way for a Christian to do these kind of arguments?
What kind? Like Dinesh is doing?
Yeah, the like not the jumbled mess of different arguments that contradict each other, but just, is there
Well,
actually space there for them to say Mark wrote Mark, Matthew wrote Matthew, Luke wrote, maybe you can get away with Luke. I think Luke's still like on the, like, maybe you can get away with Luke.
Luke still has a lot that he goes word for word off of Mark. It's not as much as Matthew. It's like 60 something %. But Luke, in the beginning of his gospel, also says he went around investigating, and there's no reason to think that he didn't just grab a copy of Mark, and that's where he got a bulk of his material from. In that case, he's not an eyewitness. He's just recording Mark, who may or may not be an eyewitness. Well, he's not either, because he's supposed to be writing on behalf of Peter. But it's a jumbled mess. The only thing I'd say is, like, with your theory of the traditional oral tradition theory, is you're just opening yourself up to the atheist to be like telephone game. That's what they're going to say.
Yeah, but I mean, that's fine. But I mean, the tradition has to come from somewhere. You can't have. I think even Dinesh makes the joke, which I was like, wrong time, wrong audience, wrong debate. Where he's like, God himself came down and wrote the book. I'm like, Dinesh, you're the idiot making the statement. Please stop. All right, let's keep going.
Yep.
Way it happened. And 4 guys are telling you their point of view, right?
Yeah. None
Okay.
of them the women who actually, by the way.
No, you're not hearing from the women. I agree. You're 4 male gospel writers, apparently. Now, I lost my train of thought for a second. Sorry.
I like how the accusation of biblical sexism just destroys them without it.
Yeah, I was like, I gotta derail right here. I gotta choose another course. But okay, I don't know where we're at, like about halfway through. Is this the part when they're talking about, because he brings up the criterion of embarrassment, right?
I've always said that I think that's the worst. I think it's the worst because I've been writing since I was 16 years old. Even me, even when I was like just basically copying comic book writing, I understood how to make a situation embarrassing for a character, and that didn't mean that suddenly my, collage version of Wolverine and Batman is suddenly a real character or a real person. You know what I mean? Like, I was just like, what? The criteria of embarrassment, I think, is the worst criteria for proving anything.
Yeah, and it's, I think Alex brought it up earlier, or he brings it up later, is the woman thing. Is that was the job roles that they were expected to have.
Mm-hmm.
The women in the law are the ones who clean, dress, and handle dead bodies because it's a icky thing to do according to the law, and they're lesser in status.
Mm-hmm.
So it wouldn't be surprising to, but also, whenever the criterion of embarrassment is brought up, it's always brought up in like some kind of weird legal sense. Like, you have to have 2 women that, have the witness for it to be taken seriously. And it's like that we're not talking about court setting. We're talking about gossip and the marketplace of ideas, just spread amongst in the marketplace or in homes. We're not talking about at the Sanhedrin. And so there's no reason for this weird standard that they set. Do you understand?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't understand. What I don't get about this portion of the argument is why Dinesh couldn't just say, well, I don't know if it was this portion or it was just a few seconds ago or a few minutes ago, why he couldn't just say, and I take it on faith. I take it on faith that this is true, because if I try to prove it, there's no way to prove it one way or the other. You can't prove which narrative is the correct narrative. So I'm taking it on faith that this is the correct narrative, because this is the narrative the church gave us, or this is the narrative. I mean, if you don't even want to give it, you don't want to go into church politics. Just be like, this is the narrative that's in the canon. This was inspired by the Holy Scripture. Fine. I don't know why you can't just say that.
I don't know. Like, would that be an interesting debate if somebody just went up there and said, "I take every point on faith"? Like, who cares? Like, why are we debating if you're gonna do that? Like, but I understand what you're saying.
Someone was saying that both Dinesh and Alex, I don't know if this is true. This is one of the Christian commentaries I was listening to. That both Dinesh and Alex didn't want to do this debate, that they both wanted to do a different topic. Do you know if that's true?
No idea. I didn't even know this debate was supposed to happen until afterwards.
Oh,
So I also don't want to get too caught up on this specific example, but I suppose we'll have to sort of leave it with the audience in the live stream. The point that I'm trying to
You don't have to comment on this. I just think it's funny that Alex, this is the first video I've ever seen him where he looks like a supervillain the entire time. He never has a normal face except for in the very beginning.
make is that it, like, the historicity of it.
It's like he had 3 aneurysms
for
and he
Christianity.
died and came
The
back.
historicity of the life of Jesus. Like, if it were discovered historically speaking that a man called Jesus never existed, that would completely undermine Christianity.
Are you
That's
saying that?
important. No, I'm not saying that.
That is so. Did you go back?
He's like, please say that, because I'll argue that. He's just looking for a bone, and I was like, no, shut up.
Of
okay.
course I'm not saying
Let me
that.
ask you a different
I'm saying
question.
that historically it matters. The crucifixion, the resurrection, these are matters which historically matter to Christians. And so when we're dealing with the
Okay, this is where I think he's throwing him. I think he's secretly. Maybe I'm just being too generous, but I think he's secretly throwing him a bone. And I'm not just saying that. Look at the expression here. Like, this is like, you're this stupid that I'm going to walk you through a Theology 101 course right now on stage. Maybe I'm overreading into it, but that's what it felt like to me.
the historical account of what happened, when they're riddled with contradictions, I think that that's a problem. If you don't think that's a problem, then that's fine. But I think that the people listening and wanting to find out if the Bible is true might see that as reason to undermine the trust of the text.
No, first of all, almost everything that we know about those events in terms of modern historical reliability, for example, where is the...
What statement, BS, what statement was he about to make before he interrupted himself?
I have no idea.
I don't know where those words were going.
Are they talking about historicity and then they're jumping around? Like, I don't know what's going on.
Like, he started off with a sentence. Like, go back. Like, I'm not even picking on him. I'm being like serious. Like, I feel like there's something wrong here with the way he's speaking.
The people listening and wanting to find out
So,
if the Bible is true
Alex
might
asked
see
a
that as
real
reason to undermine
question.
the trust of the text.
No, first of all, almost everything that we know about those
Almost everything that we know
events in terms of modern
about those events, in terms of modern
historical reliability,
historical reliability. Oh shit! I don't have a place to go. I'm about to debunk the Bible.
for example,
Right? Like, I'm not being a dick here when I point that out, right?
What? Okay, this is a serious question. It's gonna be a little funny sounding and it's be a little mean sounding on my part.
Okay.
Does Dinesh look like he has a little bit of stroke mouth? Because
Yeah, he does.
if that's the case, like if he's suffered minor strokes recently, maybe he kept it private or whatever, like this would definitely explain cognitive abilities since last debates, but that's me purely speculating. But his left side of his mouth looks like it's drooping slightly throughout the whole thing to me, but that's just my opinion.
I mean, there's something going on because the different, and I'm overstressing this, so I'll say it a little bit more gently. the arguments that he's using are arguments that are real. They just don't go together. They're opposing arguments that if two Christians were debating, they would use these arguments against each other. And he's merging them into one sentence, and he catches himself, and then he switches before he finishes his statement. All right, I'm gonna hit play.
Where is the site of Jesus's crucifixion? Unknown.
Allegedly, this goes to
Disputed.
the
There are
Holy
a couple
Sepulchre.
of potential sites, but it's not known. What day of the year was Jesus born? Unknown. We think Jesus lived for 33 years, but let's say that one of the Gospels said it was 33 and the other one said it was 34. Do you think that would actually refute Christianity?
No, no,
Okay,
no.
it would.
Was he trying to set himself up for a softball? I don't get it.
I
Off
feel
on that,
like
and this
wow, that face. The Oh, okay. I'm not gonna even comment.
contradiction would be trivial because the issue is not whether Jesus lived for
He keeps on arguing against things that Alex never said.
He's trying to get Alex to he's fishing. It seems like
Is that
he's
what he
fishing,
is?
fishing for an easier time, and Alex isn't biting.
for 33 or 34 years old.
Right,
The
but,
issue
that,
is
but that, that's
something-
a different kind, because if you could tell me that the reason why they had specifically chosen those ages was to serve a theological point, knowing that they're not trying to, knowing that they're
And where Alex is about to go is something that me and you have argued about, both jokingly and seriously, on my channel and on other people's streams, which is I'm saying, hey, they're making these changes for theological reasoning. And then you're coming back with the atheist argument saying, well, that means they're lying. And I'm like, no, that doesn't mean they're lying. They're trying to get to a deeper truth. I don't understand why Dinesh just didn't go. If he's going to mention this and undermine the credibility of the historical accuracy of the Bible, why doesn't he just go into a theological or spiritual argument or spiritual defense of what the Bible's saying? Why does he keep trying to have it both ways? Do you know what I'm saying?
Is this the part where he's talking about if one author says Jesus is 33 and the other's 34?
Yeah,
Says
yeah,
34?
we
Yes.
just heard that. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's it has to be one or the other. And I would understand why Alex would, because we're talking about historical. We started the whole talk here with historical accuracy. You can't just switch to the theological defense because then you're red herring, because the whole topic is on the historical accuracy, not. And so historically, he has to be one or the other ages. He can't be both. And at that point, if he's one or the other, you have to say maybe he's neither, or you have to explain which of the one is using a theological interpretation, the other one using a historical one.
Or you could just, Dinesh, I don't think has the balls to say it. He could just say, well, or one of them got it wrong. But I don't think Dinesh has the balls to say that.
Because he's arguing that each one was a eyewitness testimony. So no, he can't say that.
that they're willing to sort of adapt history in order to make a theological point. I wouldn't say that.
And
that
I've
point
heard you say this to me before when we're talking about this topic, exactly what Alex just said.
alone undermines Christianity. What I would say is that it undermines our trustworthiness in the Bible. I'm not saying that any one of these contradictions.
And I don't see why it has to undermine your trustworthiness of the Bible if you understand it as a Greek live, or just the Gospels themselves, as we're talking about. If you understand them as Greek writings, as Greek literature, you're not trying to make the Gospels Hebrew history. It's much easier to understand it in the context of the genre that it is. I don't understand why you would try to switch the genre from a Greek theological writing about a Hebrew guy named Jesus into a historical Jewish writing that's supposed to be dry history. I don't even understand why mentally you would try to make that flip.
Because this is most people I hear who are defending his point of view are saying that this is in the genre of Greco-Roman historical narrative. They're not saying Greek theological writings. They're saying it's historical narrative.
But it's Greek lives. Like it's if you've read Plutarch, if you've read Suetonius, this reads exactly like this kind of writing. It reads the same. I don't understand why. And when I said this 11 years ago on YouTube, people were calling me an asshole and nuts and irreligious for it. But you go now and you listen to Bart Ehrman, and Bart Ehrman has now had 2 different guests, one in particular who wrote a book on it, where her whole thesis statement is that this is clearly a Greek life, like that, meaning like the writings of Plutarch and the writing of Suetonius. This is in that genre. It's written in the exact same format, which is what I said, except I don't have a PhD. You know what I mean? Like, I don't understand why you can't just admit that. If popes can admit it and their livelihood depends on the Bible being true, why can't, why can't a Protestant? I just don't get it.
Because sola scriptura.
Is that what it is? Is that what's holding them from saying?
It's gotta be, right?
Yeah.
They have no authority if they just undermine the Bible. This is your benefit of your religion, is that you get a little added security in your church.
Yeah. No. I mean, we all know how all that goes.
Contradictions can tell us Christianity is false. Of course
No,
not.
but I'm saying
Firstly, the question is not
Uh-oh.
if Christianity is
We're being-
true, whether
we're
the
being
Bible is true.
bombarded
It may
by
be the
God.
case that a man called
Hold on.
Jesus came down to earth, rose from the dead. It's just that the gospel accounts get the details wrong, which mean that the Bible is not correct, but the
No,
story
that
that the
doesn't mean
Bible
that.
tells is true. It
Look.
means that Christianity is true, but the Bible is false. That's perfectly consistent.
I'm simply,
I'm
I'm
not saying
simply
that.
saying that.
I'm going to play that again, BS, because I want you to respond to that, because I responded to that in my video. Let's go a little bit further back.
To make a theological point. I wouldn't say that that point alone undermines Christianity. What I would say is that it undermines our trustworthiness in the Bible. I'm not saying that any one of these contradictions can tell us Christianity is false. Of course
No,
not.
but I'm saying that-
Firstly, the question is not if Christianity is true, it's whether the Bible is true. It may be the case that a man called Jesus came down to earth, rose from the dead. It's just that the gospel accounts get the details wrong, which mean that the Bible is not correct, but the
No,
story
that
that the
doesn't
Bible
mean that.
tells is true.
So when we've had this argument, you've never developed it that far, but you have had this argument before. Do you think Alex's next step to your argument that you've made, and I'm giving you credit for it because you said it first, and I know that for a fact. Do you think his next step to the argument that you've made is the correct next step?
Yeah, it's good. First, I'll give him credit for keeping it on the track of what the debate's about. If Dinesh is trying to move it towards is Christianity true, that's not the topic.
Yeah.
Is the Bible true is the topic, which is an easier claim to handle than Christianity, because there's a lot of claims that make up Christianity. If you can show one rock solid contradiction in the Bible, you've demonstrated that the Bible's not true.
Oh, the atheists hate it when I use the for my hypothetical fake Alex O'Connor, when I use the it's only an apparent contradiction. So many atheists just went ape shit in my comments for me saying that.
Yeah, because we hear it from everybody. But one of my favorite, okay, from an atheist standpoint, is the numerical ones, because you can't get away from numerical contradictions, and that's usually the ones between Samuel, Kings, and Chronicles. Like, how many horses did this person have, or how many shekels did this thing cost? Like, and usually the answer to that is scribal error. And if I say, "Oh, there's an error," it's an error. I don't care if it's a scribal error or a divine error. No, the originals, bro. The originals are true. I'm like, shut up and prove that. Like, if I could demonstrate a scribal error, that means there's an error. Shut up.
Lisa, welcome to the stream.
Hey, thanks. Hey, BS.
Howdy, Lisa.
So, Alex is talking about.
Did you watch the debate, Lisa?
No, I did not. I generally don't like debates.
Mm-hmm.
Just because of the way they're formatted. I like narration, like you.
I can guarantee you that this one is
got,
not formatted at all. The Dinesh just takes in, and O'Connor just tries to pull him back on track a few times, and he doesn't succeed at all.
Oh, okay. I might watch that one then. I just don't like the way the way formal debates are formatted, so I generally don't watch them.
Real quick, less and maybe a minute, not longer than a minute. Can you give me your breakdown on is the Bible true? And if you don't think it's true, why you don't think it's true? But the short version, because this is going to be a long debate, Lisa. This video is going to go on for a little bit, and we're going to probably try to
Yeah.
call it a night pretty quick.
I don't think it's true because of, well, there's a lot of reasons, but the main one is archaeology.
Okay. All right. Okay. We're going to hit play. Lisa, we're all going to mute. And then whenever everyone wants to talk, just unmute it. And then I'll hit pause. Okay.
It means that Christianity is true, but the Bible is false. That's perfectly consistent.
I'm simply,
so no, I'm not saying
simply
that.
saying that what you're doing is you are supplying a motive that is
Did he supply a motive? I didn't hear a motive.
No, he's just projecting.
He's just projecting, right? Like, so he's saying, okay, so you're saying that their motive was to make it theologically true. And it's like, no, the Bible says we're making this argument to fulfill the prophecy. That is what the Bible's saying. That's what it says. Those are the words.
But this is even a stupider comment if you think about it, because he's sitting across from a guy who's taking the opposing position in a debate. Of course, his motive is the opposite of charitable. Like, what do you expect, dude?
I don't.
Lisa, any
accept-
comment?
Yeah, I don't accept that Christianity can be true and the Bible not be true, because the Bible is the one thing that Christians base their faith on. So if
So,
the Bible,
the
so
so-
if you take away the Bible, you take away the quote unquote rock.
Christianity existed before the Bible existed, and the claim of Christianity, whether it's true or false, lays only on.
I know.
Lays only.
I-
Hold on. It lays only on the fact of whether or not Jesus rose from the dead, and if he rose from the dead, if the implication that Christians make is that then he's God, because he rose from dead on his own. He defied
know
death, he conquered death. That's the
Christianity-
argument.
I know Christianity existed before the Bible existed. My argument is that Christians today, because Christianity before the Bible existed, Christianity was based on word of mouth. But today, Christians are Christians because of the Bible. And if you take the Bible away, there is no Christianity. That's my point.
Yeah, you're talking to a Catholic, Lisa. He's not going to buy that. He's going to say the church.
I'm sorry. I'm going to be really blunt, and I'm not. I promise, Lisa. I'm not trying to be a jerk. I wasn't listening to you at all. I'm trying to get someone that on the stream that I've been trying to get on stream for a few streams now. I'm seeing if she'll say yes. I'm sorry. Can you say it again, Lisa? I'm so sorry. Forgive me.
Yeah, I said I'm not saying that early Christianity was based on the Bible, because I know Christianity existed before the Bible in its current form existed. The New Testament existed. What I'm saying is Christians now base their faith on the Bible. So Christians now would not be Christians if there was no New Testament.
Church.
We'd have to. Yeah, I was about.
I knew you were. I already told her that when you weren't listening. I defended your honor, Catholic.
I appreciate that, sweetie. Thank you. And on our next date, I'll pay for the steak.
Yippee!
Let's keep going.
completely made up, and that I could engage in exactly, let's just take, for example, the 33 versus the 34 years. Now, here's what I'm saying. If there was such a contradiction and I were being you, I would say, oh, the reason that Matthew said it was 33 is because 3 is the number of the Trinity. And so 33 has a certain theological resonance because 3 and 3 is 33. Hold on.
Shut the fuck up, Dinesh.
I love that O'Connor's like, let me save you from yourself. Like, I don't need to win.
Dinesh is like, I'm going to argue as if I am you, and I'm going to use numerology. I would not guess Alex would ever use numerology.
Somebody needs to tell Dinesh that 33 and 3 are not the same number.
He's a
Well, I
he's a
mean,
new ager, dude.
Yeah, he's trying to make the argument that they're holy numbers. So three is a holy number, and if you do three times is a holy number. Seven times is a holy number. The number of completions. This is not completely unheard of in Jewish thought. This is again a real argument, but not for the proof of the Bible being true. And I don't even know how it's relevant to this conversation. I don't even know what he's trying to prove. That the Trinity is a what's Trinity times 9? How would you say Ninethean? Is a Ninethean is a I don't even know.
What he's not doing is proving the historicity of the Bible, like by busting out numerology and stuff. That doesn't make any sense.
Okay, so Mitra added, to be fair, Dinesh, it was not a poor defense of a good position. It was a good defense of an absurd position. God of the New Testament God of the New Testament is the same God of the Old Testament. May be well proven wrong, but I got to go to bed. I will write comments later on your video. Thank you, Mitra. If you ever want to come in, feel free. I welcome everyone. I don't care if you disagree with me. Everyone's welcome on the stream. And if you come from a different religion, or if you're an atheist, or you're some obscure type of atheist, none of that bothers me. Come on in, and we'll have a good time, and we'll laugh. My days of doing long form debates are probably behind me for a while, but I'll gladly debate on anything. Keanu, could you do me a favor and go check to see if your dog's okay? All right, continuing.
And then I would come around and say, well, the reason the other guy said 34 is actually 3 plus 4 is 7. God made the world in 7 days.
Oh,
7 is known to
not as a joke, Keanu, you're very true. Let me read his comment real quick. He goes, for real, Alex would have defended Christianity so much better than Dinesh ever could have. Very true.
be a number fraught with theological significance. And I'm saying this is basically Alex BS.
Dinesh, the gospel writers tell us that's why it happened. They say that the reason the family went to Egypt was to fulfill the prophecy of Hosea.
Okay, and so you
As a Christian, this part was so painful to watch.
So in other words, if the gospel writer, and now imagine that the gospel writers had written what you just said. Imagine
Alex is almost defending the Bible to correct the so-called Christian on stream. Lisa, go ahead. You unmuted. Sorry about that.
Yeah. Matthew did quote Hosea, but he misquoted Isaiah or Hosea. Sorry. I'm sorry.
So I actually read the commentary on the Matthean line. It's actually not even a misquote. It's a summarization of several different quotes, which is the only defense that you can give. And it has to do with the Jewish people being the different tribes being the branches. And so therefore you're branching off into different prophecies that are fulfilled when combined together and synthesized. But that's such an ugly answer that Dinesh would have to give that answer and then stay on topic and stick to the answer no matter how hard. And I know I'm talking debate tactics and people called me dishonest for talking debate tactics in my review. I don't care. This is a debate. You need to have tactics. You need to have a strategy. Dinesh clearly has nothing. Like he's just throwing shit and seeing what sticks.
You're wrong about the Hosea one though, because
Hosea is talking about
the Exodus.
Israel.
Well, no, I'm thinking about the one where they go to Egypt, and then and it's a fulfillment of the prophecy of I thought it's the prophecy of Hosea.
So Hosea says, "Out of Egypt I called my people," and what he's talking about is looking backwards into the Exodus,
and where they're calling that it's my son, yeah, and my son Israel versus my son.
And Matthew is making it a forward-looking prophecy towards Jesus when it's clearly a backwards-looking reflection on the Exodus.
Well, there's another one. There's another one that I would rather talk about, but let me talk about that one since you brought it up and not Pula Dinesh. So I'm going to call it Pula Dinesh from now So that is recontextualization, which I also talked about in my review, which is the legitimate way that Christians interpret the Bible. We recontextualize it through the lens of Jesus to make everything point to Jesus. But it is a recontextualization. And if you don't admit that, if you don't admit that typology is a recontextualization and it's not what the original authors intended, that's where you're being dishonest. If you're trying to say that the original authors, the human authors, I'm not talking about the Holy Spirit, that if you're trying to say the human authors had Jesus in mind when they were writing Exodus or when they were writing Genesis, you're just lying. They would have no concept of what Israel would even be back in the United Kingdom, let alone in the divided kingdom, when they didn't even know that Babylon was going to come in and destroy them and lose 12 tribes or 10 tribes.
Well, you
Well,
know
that's
what I'm going to say,
fair.
but I'm
Yeah.
going to say it for the rest of the people. Recontextualization is not legitimate because
Well, it is legitimate if you're a Christian. I mean, that's the point.
no,
That is what we're
no,
doing. Yeah, it
no,
is. It
It's
is.
not for
You can't get
anybody.
away from it. That's what we're
Alpha,
doing. That's literally
alpha,
what the Bible says we're doing. The New
alpha,
Testament clearly says that's how we do it.
alpha.
What?
Hear me out. Okay.
Alpha.
You're not. I mean, I'm not going to agree with you
If,
on this one, but go ahead.
if the Holy Spirit is God, and of course I'm the atheist, so I don't believe any of this. But if the Holy Spirit is God, that means he's the same yesterday, today, and
Okay.
forever. That means he
Progressive,
has all
progressive
that means
revelation
alpha,
Is what made the
progressive
Mormon Church.
revelation.
alpha.
I love you, BS. No, it's
That means he has all knowledge, and that means
but the human authors do not,
recontextualization
Lisa.
is not needed
But
because
no, the human
whether
authors do not have. The human
alpha,
authors are
let me
limited in
finish.
their
It
understanding.
means that it doesn't matter whether
It
or
does
not
matter.
the original authors had a
The original authors don't have access to anything. They're just being inspired to what they're writing. That's it. That's all they
Or-
get.
All right, Dinesh to Alpha. He's like, I'm just gonna recontextualize myself into a win.
What my favorite part about Dinesh's, I mean, Dinesh hit so many different freaking counters. If he
by
could
the
have
way,
just
I
stuck
didn't
to
think
one,
Dinesh was a Christian.
We don't know. We already talked about that
we don't
earlier.
know. Lisa, for real, no, I'm not joking around. We literally had this discussion just a few minutes before you got on. We really can't tell if he's really a Christian or not because his argumentation was so bad. I'm gonna look it up. I'm just gonna look it up.
Gotcha.
Go ahead and I'm gonna hit play, or do you guys want to talk while I'm looking it up?
You can play.
Okay.
In the actual texts, one of them said he was 33 when he died because of the number 3 and its significance.
Correct.
And another said that he was 34 because of the number 4 and its significance. That would be a contradiction. And not and in that instance, not just a historical contradiction, but a spiritual and theological one too.
Actually, no, it actually wouldn't.
Oh, say it. Come on.
It wouldn't. I'll
How
tell
would
you
that-
why.
You don't think that's a contradiction?
No, it's not a contradiction at all because the gospel writers are constantly
Contradicting each other.
No, drawing, not contradicting each other. If they were constantly contradicting each other, you wouldn't have spent half an hour on a single event that, frankly, I haven't even heard of. In fact, no one's ever heard of. I've never.
He was at one point a Catholic and then left Catholicism. That's all that the thing says.
And then started his own New Age religion, probably.
Let's see.
Dineshianity.
He broke with Catholicism. He's debating leading atheists. That's the thing that's being said here. Hey, can you guys
Never
still see the screen?
ever
Because
heard-
my screen blanked out. Are you guys still there?
Yeah,
I
I'm
see
still here.
Okay. Oh my gosh, this is not even. This is. So I'm looking up. I don't, because Google now does, or Bing now does, whatever religion you are. They're just going to give you that information. And they're not going to give you counter information. And so it's 7 of the most shameful moments from Dinesh from his history on talking about religion. And so That's going all the way back to 2010. They're just saying that he's the worst apologist. Going back to 2010.
But he just said, I don't know whether you heard this, Alpha, but Dinesh just said that Alex said that the Gospels were rife with contradictions, and Dinesh said, no, it's not, because you just spent a few minutes on just one. And I'm like, what? What does that have to do with the price of eggs in China?
So according to this, he has when pressed on what religion he belongs in today, according to the New York Times, he has declined denominational importance. I don't know if that's a refuse to answer, but that's his answer to what denomination he belongs to.
That sounds universalist or New Ager to me.
And I heard what you were saying, Lisa, and I heard what Alex saying. I don't really have a response to it, and B, if I was in an active debate, like I debated Tux and I debated BS recently, I would just not comment and I would just let it go. It's not something. I know this sounds mean, but it's not something that a Christian or a Catholic needs to engage with on that level. If we're already having a discussion of the metatextual, is it true? Like if we're talking about the whole Bible, is it true? And there are instances in the Bible, like let's say Esther, which is a comedy. It's literally an event that didn't happen, or it's Job, which is a pagan story that's been recontextualized into Judaism, which we are now recontextualizing into Christianity. Saying whether or not these stories are true or not, these specific ones, the ones that are literature, is insane. Like it's an insane argument to have. You'd have to argue for moral truth, and that's what O'Connor tried to. I'm saying O'Connor like he's like a something, but that's what O'Connor said in the beginning. O'Connor was like, which version of the Bible is true are we going to argue about today? And Dinesh cannot pick a single one. He's trying to argue for every single one in every instance. And the Bible is a collection of 70 some books, or 66 books if you're a Protestant. Each book has its own different level of truth. It has its own different audience. It has its own level of knowledge that the author had. You also have the fact that some of these books are compilations and anthologies of different books compressed together. You have compiles who have taken different version of these books and pressed it into one book. So then you got to argue, well, which version of the 3 or 4 versions that we have in our text is the correct one? This is an insane argument to have, and Dinesh cannot handle it. Trent Horn could do this. I'm not kidding. Trent Horn, Jimmy Akin, even James White, who we would all be saying he's wrong, could have this argument because at least he's going to stick to a single position.
Well, any of those guys at least know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
That's to be fair.
All right, I'm going to hit play.
Never heard
Which
anyone
event?
discuss this in any context. So
Wait,
you fish out this,
which event? Which event?
this prophecy about Hosea. I'll go back and look at all this. But what I'm trying to get at is, if you had a plethora of contradictions,
He doesn't know. He doesn't know his own reference.
you wouldn't be spending the
Did you see that? Did you see it? Look at that. Look at this frustration here.
constantly
Contradicting each other.
No, not contradicting each other. If they were constantly contradicting each other, you wouldn't have spent half an hour on a single event that, frankly, I haven't even heard of. In fact, no one's ever heard of. I've never ever heard
which
anyone discuss this in any context. So
Which event? Which event?
this prophecy about Hosea. I'll go back and look at all this. But what I'm trying to get at is, if you had a plethora of contradictions, you wouldn't be spending the entire debate on one that I'm sure no one in the
Hold on. That sounds familiar. Hold on. The guy doesn't even know the Hosea prophecy.
I love the fact that Alex is like, oh my God, this guy is like toast.
But so there's a prophecy, and it's in this conversation. It's in this portion right here that is not actually in the Bible. And it's actually a compilation of different prophecies because it's fulfilled through the prophets. And it's basically saying, in every commentary that I have, I want to be very clear. I mean, every Bible commentary, whether it's a literalist interpretation or a secular interpretation, says it's not in the Bible, says it's not in the Old Testament. And Dinesh just seems unaware of any of these theological issues, of any of these basic Bible issues.
That's not the one they're talking about. The one you're talking about is it says that they'll call him a Nazareth, and it's
Yeah,
from,
the Nazarene.
supposed to be Zechariah, and that one doesn't exist.
At all. But it's the apologetical answer to it is that it's by the way, I'm not presenting it as my answer. The answer that apologists are supposed to give is that it's a compilation of different prophecies being fulfilled.
Which
And
would work,
Dinesh,
except for that it specifically says it comes from Zechariah.
well, regardless, that's the answer that Dinesh is supposed to give, and he doesn't even know he doesn't know the answers to these questions. Do you see? Like, we have been playing, and excuse the crude terminology, we have been playing tennis for maybe the last 15 years on YouTube between atheists and Christians. I'm not even talking about Catholics. Let's not bring Catholics into it. Protestants and atheists have been hitting the ball back and forth, and now it's moved on to TikTok. And you've seen these arguments 100 times, 200 times. You don't even have to have read the Bible or believe in God or be an atheist or be an anti-theist to know these arguments, because we've had them so often. You can quote the verses from the arguments that have been had. And Dinesh just seems unaware of all this debate and all this conversation that has developed because of a thing called the internet and YouTube. Like, is like he's arguing arguments that a Christian would have argued pre 1992.
My guess, like, I don't know that much about his history and debate, is, if I had to guess though, he's probably the type of debater who's more familiar and comfortable with philosophical arguments.
Okay.
And since this is a Bible study, essentially, we're asking if the Bible is true. You're not going to philosophize your way out of that. You're not going to be able to do philosophical arguments. You're going to actually have to get into the historical nitty gritty, know the passages, know contextual criticism, all these different things that the philosophical people aren't usually as up to as the preachers are, or the ex-preachers.
One of the places, like, I feel like I won my debate against Unfound Cause. That's what I call them, but Found Cause. One place where I faltered is that they messed up when they were saying which verse they were reading. They were reading the verse that I had just read, but they gave me a different book and they gave me a different numbers. And so I got lost, and I was like, "Could you read?" Like, I was like, "I'm a Catholic. I don't know verse and number and verse. Can you read it to me?" And then halfway through them explaining what they're saying, I'm like, they're just reading what I just read, but because I don't know chapter and verse, that's the only place where I really messed up. But I feel like Dinesh doesn't even know it in the sense that a Catholic would know it, which is like, oh, we know the story, orally because we're hearing it. We don't know it because we're not reading it. You know what I mean? I don't even think he knows it orally.
Well, yeah. Like, okay, so you said his history was he was a Catholic, and then he
was a
stopped being.
Catholic. Yeah.
So right there, speaking as a former Protestant, he's already off to a bad start in this department. He's
Okay.
coming from Catholicism. He left Catholicism. We don't know how invested he was. And then, so he was already off to just getting the bare bones minimum, according to a Protestant, of knowing the stories. But then he went off into La La Land and did probably quit like an atheist would, and probably just forgot the Bible, forgot the stories, forgot the stuff. And now he's just like, well, this philosophical argument is good, the Kalam, or the teleological or whatever, and just goes into that route.
I think you're right. Lisa, you have any comment before I hit play again?
It seems like he doesn't really think about, like, it seems to me he really didn't think about Catholicism. Like,
Hey, Thomas.
Maybe he grew up in it and didn't think anything of it, and then he went another way, and maybe then he went another way, but he's never really thought about anything religious. That's just what it seems to me.
Like, and I'm not trying to defend D'Souza with what I'm about to say. I've physically read the Bible front to back 7 times in different translations, and I've heard the Bible from when I was a baby until I was 13 when I left the church, and then I've heard the Bible since I was 33 until I'm now 33. Okay, and I still can't do chapter and verse, so I don't know how he thinks he can have this conversation without having beforehand read the Bible and had the passages ready, have at least the stuff that he knew he was going to talk about to prove the Bible. Like, and he doesn't even bring up the text that people use. He's not going with, the Bible is good for, our scripture is good for all teaching and learning. He's not even using the standard arguments. So,
Well, that's
sorry.
a good point. That's a good point
Well,
that you
that's
bring
what I'm
up.
talking about, Alpha.
So the good point I was saying you bring up is if you pay attention, Alex has a notebook.
Yeah.
I don't know if Dinesh has a notebook. I don't know if he has notes in front of him or not, or he's going off his brain. But Alex is at the ready with verses, what they say
Yeah.
exactly, where they came from. He's if you watch him, he's flipping back and forth through his pages to find his points, and Dinesh is just winging it the whole time.
The Bible is a compilation. Let's say we go with the shortest version, the 66 books. It's a compilation of 66 books. There's no way you can keep them all straight in your head, especially in a debate where you're getting heated. You know what I mean? Like, you need to have something in front of you to keep it straight. Even James White, who supposedly has the whole thing memorized, uses 2 or 3 Bibles in every debate.
Yeah, and it's a little easier for Alex because he's on the offensive. So all he has to do is have his attack verses on already, and the defender has to be ready for whatever the attacker is going to bring. So the defender has to have a more wide berth of knowledge than the attacker because they have to be ready to bring stuff up to whatever the other guy's going to say.
Lisa, go ahead and say what you're going to say. I'm sorry that me and BS cut you off.
Oh, that's okay. I was just saying that's what I was saying with he's just not ready. It just seems to me like he doesn't understand anything about Christianity. And maybe that's just me reading too much into it, but it seems to me he hasn't really thought much about anything in Christianity. Like, maybe he was like, well, I was this when I was younger, and I just accepted it because that's the way I was supposed to do, and stuff like that.
Well, he's been debating atheists since Hitchens was like the atheist to debate. So he's been doing this for a while. I'm unaware of him having a good win record. I don't hear people saying that he was a great debater or anything like that. If you're losing this bad consistently, like based on what that one article that I just saw from the New York Times, I don't know why anyone would want to debate him, and I don't know why he would keep doing this if he's getting humiliated every freaking time. That's a lot of money.
Somehow he's built a name up, though, because he has debated Hitchens and Dawkins back in the long distant past. So I asked myself the same question with Alex. I'm like, why would he debate him? But probably just purely name recognition. But Alex might be even bigger than Dinesh, so I don't know. Maybe it's the other way around.
The audience is sort of either.
Hold on.
But okay, you've heard of it. Probably because you've been listening to his YouTube channel, right?
You don't think that this is a highly discussed point of contention in the Gospels, the flight to Egypt and its contradiction with
the flight to Egypt. Look, the flight to Egypt is an important event in the Gospel. I'm not saying.
Dinesh, also, you said, why could you only bring up this one example? Take your pick. The date of Jesus' crucifixion, whether they're to take a staff or not to take a staff, the dating of Jesus flipping the tables at the temple. Mary.
By the way, the take a staff one does not impress me at all. That one I don't care about. I know that Ehrman makes a big deal of it also, and I've heard the argument for it, like why it's a big deal. I still don't care about the staff. I just don't.
Magdalene and what she says at the tomb when the temple curtain rips.
So I think of the ones that he mentions here in this like little mini Gish Gallop, I think the biggest one is who saw Jesus first. Mary Magdalene, James, Peter, who actually saw Jesus. I think that one's a good one. Like if you're gonna have a contradiction, I think that's the best one.
That's not a good one. The
You don't think that's a good one?
the common answer for who saw him first, because it's one woman, two women, three women, or more than five women.
Or
so
Peter and yeah.
no, the male apostles never see him first. The girls always run to go tell them, except for in Mark, they don't tell anybody.
Are they in all four? Where's
It's the women are the first ones to see him in every gospel, but it's a different amount of women. And so the common apologetic
So-
response for that is there was always the maximum amount of women, but each author only mentioned the least of the amount that they mentioned.
So the two that the I'm going to say the blah blah blah. The two that I have memorized is Mary Magdalene and then Peter and I think it's James, the younger.
Mary Magdalene sees Jesus first at the tomb, and John runs and goes tells the disciples, and then Peter and the disciple whom Jesus loved have a foot race
Yeah.
to go into the tomb and find him. The disciple who Jesus loved does not go in. Peter goes in, but they're already after Mary saw him first. Of those ones that he just mentioned, the hardest one to work is the tomb open or closed when the women get there, because that's a binary. It's either open or closed, and you can't have both. And we have Matthew saying it's closed, and the rest of the gospel saying it's open, if I remember that right.
What about the angel versus the centurion? Whether it's two angels, one angel, which one's that argument?
There's one angel, two angels, one person in white, or one man in white and two men in white, and then that usually just gets conflated that the men are angels, and they always go with the maximum amount, just like the women. It's always two, but sometimes they only mention one.
And I just want to point out what me and you are doing here. We're being friendly. We disagree with each other, and we're working through these arguments that we're not having. We're not physically arguing. We're remembering the arguments and talking about them. And Dinesh doesn't even know the material or the argument. Like I don't think it's just being unprepared. I feel like it's like almost criminal what he's doing. Like it's bad.
Yeah, I feel like that's why Alex's frustration is showing, because he probably feels like he over prepared for this debate.
Like if it was me, I already know the material. I already know the arguments. If someone said, "Hey, we're going to debate," and I wouldn't have it be this broad, I would simply have it be like, "Okay, we're going to debate whether or not the stone was there. We're going to debate whether or how many women were there. We're going to debate who saw Jesus first." I would narrow it down to that small of a thing, and then I would rewatch the debates that I liked about it, and then I would go read the material, and I would read at least 4 or 5 different commentaries from about 4 or 5 different perspectives. I wouldn't just go with the Catholic interpretation. I'd go look at the Calvinist one. I'd go look at, during the debates, whichever one I thought was like the strongest and whichever one was the weakest, I'd look that up. Then I would spend a week writing an argument against my position. I'd do all the research to make my anti-argument as strong as possible. And then I would write my opening, not even the full debate. I would write out my opening against my best argument against my position. That's what I would do for maybe a month. And I feel like Dinesh has done nothing. Did I go on too long? Did I lose everybody? Is everybody asleep? I'm sorry.
I agreed. There's nothing to add to that.
No, I just forgive me if I'm wrong, because I'm doing this from memory, but
It's
I
okay.
think,
Dinesh is too. We're okay. We're all in Dinesh land.
I think in one gospel, one angel's on top of the stone after he rolled it away, and then in another gospel, the angel comes up to Mary Magdalene, and Mary thinks he's the gardener. And in another gospel, the angel is in the tomb, seated next to the grave cloth.
You're almost right there, but the gardener is actually Jesus himself in John's gospel. And so that's another contradiction, is who gave the women the news. because
Was
it's
it
either
Jesus or was it? Yeah.
Jesus or the angels. That's another contradiction.
And the problem with me is that I've listened to so much Bart Ehrman that the version that's in my head now is the talking cross that he loves to talk about. That's the I realize it's an apocryphal one, but that's the one that I now think of is them opening the tomb and a talking cross, holds a giant Jesus. That's the one that I now think of.
Yeah, that's a funny one.
In the Gospel of Luke, it says that this happens before Jesus' death, and in the Gospels of Matthew and Mark, it says that it happens afterwards. Like, look, we can go through any of these contradictions that you like, but the problem is that what you're going to tell me is that it's trivial, and then when I try to explain that
One that he didn't bring up is whether or not the Last Supper happened before or after the Day of Atonement, after Pesach, whatever.
Yeah. And one of the hardest ones is the time of Jesus's execution too.
And then there's whether or not the centurion was there or not, because the centurion's only there in one gospel, right?
Yeah, they would say because of the lack of information in their gospel, he was there, he just wasn't mentioned. But what you're looking for when you need a contradiction, you want two opposing pieces of information, and it's preferable that they're binaries, because if they're multiple choice, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you just pick the largest number and say that they didn't mention the largest number. They just mentioned 1 or 2, but 5 was really there. But the binaries, like Jesus was either crucified at 4 or he was crucified at 9. There's no other choices about it. Like, because the
there's also the cock crows with Peter. That's also a contradiction one, isn't it?
I don't know what that one is.
Whether it's 1 cock crow or 2 cock crows.
I think it's
or
always
3.
3.
No, I think there's a version that has a different number of cock crows.
Just say
in that it's not trivial. You say, oh well, I haven't even heard of it, and no one else really cares about this. When other people do, by the way, this is a highly discussed point of contention in the gospel. All I'm asking you to do is,
both of you were Protestants. I don't want to go too far into it because I do want to play more of the debate. But as a Catholic, they talk about the contradictions in the homily. Like in the homily, they acknowledge that these differences exist. In Protestant churches, do they at least acknowledge? Do they prepare their audience for, hey, just let you know, when you're reading the Gospels, they're not going to match up on these specific points? Do they at least do that or not?
No, they just pretend like they don't exist. At least in the fundamentalist churches, they do.
BS, you were an Anglican / Episcopalian.
No, this is what I would say. Why the supposed contradiction is so triggering for a Protestant? Because she's right. Lisa's right. Like, you get the saying that the Bible says it, I believe it, that settles it, or you get the saying we speak when the Bible speaks, and we're silent when the Bible's silent. And then when we come across these things as Protestants, they're always supposed contradictions that can be harmonized away. Until you start learning more about logic and you start realizing like binary contradictions are not harmonizable.
Yeah. Do is say that this is, when I mentioned the staff in my opening statement, and I said that whether or not they take a staff is a totally trivial contradiction. I'm not bothered by that. If I were a Christian, I would say, yeah, of course, because the texts are not going to perfectly accord. But for some reason, Augustine could not accept this, and so comes up with this ludicrous idea of a literal staff and a metaphorical staff that Jesus is talking about. If you were willing to just say, yes, this is a contradiction, but that doesn't upset the method of Christianity, I think it would be a much more defensible and respectable approach. But instead, it seems that you're unwilling to admit that.
And again, I feel, and maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like Alex just threw him a lifeline. I really do. I don't think he was just being mean. I think he was like, hey, this is the response you're supposed to give, and you didn't give it.
Have you ever heard the donkeys in Matthew's account? He's riding on a coal full.
Oh yeah, whether it's 2, whether it's 1, whether it's a donkey and a
That's always a fun one to hear people rationalize, because some people see Jesus like water skiing on 2 donkeys to the city.
Isn't it just that there's a mistranslation in the Septuagint though? Isn't that where the origin of that problem comes from?
No, my explanation
it's
for
supposed to be the foal of a donkey. There's only one. It's the foal of a donkey. And somehow they screwed it up.
No, that's not right, Lisa. The actual thing is Zephaniah or Zechariah, one of those guys who gives the thing. He does say on a donkey and a colt 2 different things, but it's said in a way to be like a repetitive statement. Like, there's a dog it's a cute puppy or something like that. It's saying the same thing, but it's saying it in different ways. But the Matthew author is a dumbass who doesn't know what the Bible's talking about in the Old Testament, and so he reads it that way in the Septuagint. I think you're correct about that, Lisa. And
That was me.
instead of reading it as
Don't you confuse me for Lisa. What are you doing?
restating the same thing twice, he actually
BS.
interprets it as two different things.
BS Gar Lewis.
BS Germania.
What happened to Gur, by the way?
He became a hippie, became a Christian. Now he's worshiping at an ashra in India.
Admit that there's even a single contradiction in these texts.
I am saying that the texts are written from 4 different points of view.
Do they contradict each
And
other?
it is quite possible that on details, Matthew tells you things that are not in Mark or
That's not what-
different
that's
than
not what
Mark,
I'm
different
asking.
than Mark, contradict Mark.
Contradict Mark.
Yes, contradict Mark. And
Okay, the debate is
And
done.
that's
You
it.
just lost. Please stop.
There it is. Good night, folks. And then he looks kind of
And
he looks
so-
kind of smug right there, like, "Ha, gotcha, you fucker."
Okay. Dinesh is supposed to be an apologist, isn't he?
Supposed
No,
to
he's a
be.
politician. He's a politician. He's a politician, and he went to jail for corruption.
See, imagine that a politician is corrupt.
He wrote a dozen selling books. He was an advisor to Ronald Reagan. So he's fucking old. He has been looked down upon by Christians for promoting conspiracy theories and controversy and controversial. I don't know. The
Then
sentence
he
doesn't make any
must be
sense.
Marjorie Taylor Greene's best friend.
Well, at least now I know how he got his popularity. I didn't know he worked in Reagan's cabinet, so that makes sense.
So I'm gonna try to read the nonsense sentence I just read. I'm gonna read it from Wikipedia. D'Souza's work has generated controversy due to its promotion of conspiracy theories and incendiary nature, but no details on what any of that means. Oh, his wife's an evangelical from Calvary Chapel. So he's non-denominational, not non-denominational, the religion, non-denominational, not that denomination, but he has no denomination, which is already,
New Ager.
no. You know what? He's a numerist.
so the point is, here's my point. You're acting, I mean, look at it this way. You would be scoring a point if you could say, God wrote 4 books and they contradict each other. Just like if you're able to say, Dinesh said this in
He
the
just denied inspiration. Did you catch it?
And now he's backtracking on contradictions.
beginning of the debate and that at the end of the debate, Dinesh is contradicting himself. On the other hand, if we have 2 guys who are here today to go
That's a fine argument, but you can't contradict fucking inspiration if you're a Christian, you fucker.
and write an account of this debate,
Mhm.
right? And then we look at their accounts, which are authentic, first person. I was their accounts with a lot of detail.
Yep.
And one guy says, for example, the lights were dark. The other guy says the lights were dim. Or one guy says, for example, that Dinesh was sitting at a 45-degree angle. Another guy says it was a 50-degree angle.
Yeah. But
These are
now
not.
imagine-
and
When I tell the version of this story in a book 10 years from now, I'm going to say Garmenio was here on stream. And you can figure out whether that's metaphorical or true.
This is not what Alex is saying at all, though. Alex is not saying that there's slight differences. He's saying that there's polar opposites. And Dinesh is trying to. What's even worse? It's not a straw man. It's like this misrepresentation. Like,
You know what?
in
What
total.
you're saying, what you're saying right now, this is not a joke. I literally was going to say this earlier, which is he's making the straw man look like a steel man. Do you know what I mean? Like he's making the straw man look buff.
But it's not even a straw man. It's just a flat out misrepresentation.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. It's like a straw
Yeah.
man compared to what Dinesh is doing.
Oh, I got you. Okay, I got you.
Looks like a steel man. You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
insane.
It's dumb. Like Dinesh is so coping right now, so hard.
Somebody said I was coping for him on one of my comments, and I'm like, what? I was like, what are you talking about?
And then,
Now-
and then
now
someone
I'm-
goes, Dinesh
Thomas
was sitting at
says
a
that he's
43
63 years
5-degree
old.
angle because he thought this was a way of maximizing his rhetorical
Yeah, but
effectiveness with
n-
the audience. People would be like,
Now imagine somebody said, Alex was wearing a blue jacket, and the reason
I thought this was killer, by the way. If I was an atheist, I would have been what he says right here. I'd be using this against every Christian from here on out.
he was wearing a blue jacket. Oh, someone said it's a blue jacket. Someone else said it's a red jacket. Who cares? You're quite right. But if somebody said specifically, I know that the reason he was wearing a blue jacket was because there's an upcoming election in the UK that's just been announced, and he was trying to represent the Conservative Party. And somebody else said, I know that the reason he was wearing red, and in fact, he told us himself that the reason he was wearing red is because he wanted to support Labour in the upcoming general election in his home country.
okay, perfect
You would
example.
say that is a contradiction and means that one of you wasn't paying close enough attention, not just to the color of my jacket, but the very message that I was trying to get across.
that could well be true. But what I'm
I think it
getting
is
at is
true.
we know
That is
just
true.
from normal
2 + 2 really could be 4. Hey, you're right. Yeah, I know I am right. That's what it means.
experience that if the two of us are sitting in a cafe and we see an accident,
Mhm.
these kinds of differences are normal.
And again, to my audience who says I was defending Dinesh, I wasn't defending Dinesh here. This is a real argument. This is a real apologetical argument. But Dinesh doesn't have the argument down. He has bad timing, bad execution. He's not saying the correct word track for this argument. I understand that as a atheist watching this, you don't want to hear that the debate is a game. After this is over, they're sitting next to each other. They don't hate each other. Part of this is to make money for both of them on both sides. They're getting paid to be here. Part of this really is a tennis match. They don't care about whether or not you convert or not. There are actual debates about what's the purpose of apologetics because of how much of a game it is. And that's why people like me now have anti-apologetic channels, even though we're Christians. And that's why people like Kip and Dan get frustrated, even though Dan's a Christian, get frustrated with apologists because they feel like apologists are just lying because they're playing a game when they know all the facts and they're still holding a position that they shouldn't hold if they know all the facts. That's all that's going on here is that there's a game being played and Dinesh doesn't seem to know the rules or how to hold the racket, to stay with the same metaphor. BS, you want to say anything on that or just move forward?
Normal. So let's just say, for example, here's God showing us a revelation, and the revelation can be whatever it is, and you and I write an account of it, and somebody finds that
What's amazing is that both Jordan Peterson and I was going to say Brant Petrie, Bart Ehrman, both of them do this. Both of them talk about how, to do several different accounts to try to copy what the you accept Mormons as Christians, or which Dan? I don't think Mormons are Christians, but Dan considers himself a Christian, and Dan is a Mormon, and I don't have a reason to shit on him, so I'm not going to shit on him.
That's why he threw up air quotes when he said Christian. If you rewind the tape.
Okay.
so my account of it.
Yep.
Sorry.
Question.
Oh no, no,
Johnson,
no,
you're
no.
fired.
Crap. Where were we?
Which Dan are we talking about?
Dan McKellen.
Oh, okay.
Or is it difficult to believe
Is
the
this where we
Christian
left
is
off?
like right with you?
I think the question is, did they happen?
Is this where we left off? Am I close?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Did they happen? Right? And the
I know it's water, but I feel like he's just giving him alcohol. Like, just go, just go, just whatever the fuck you're about to say. Let's rock and roll.
Here's where the Christian and the atheist are on common ground, because the Christian and the atheist would both say that based upon ordinary experience, it can't happen.
Sure.
Because otherwise it wouldn't be a miracle.
So what evidence might we have to suggest that these
Hold-
miraculous events as described in the Gospels did happen?
I'm saying that because the
Did
miraculous
you see the head
event-
nod? Did you see the drunk head nod? You see the
I don't think Alex cares at this point. I think he's kind of already checked out.
And so the Christian would simply say, if God exists, miracles are obviously possible.
Sure, I agree.
The atheist has a higher burden. And that is, the atheist has to say that whether or not God exists, which is not the topic of our debate here.
How does... Okay. I'm a Christian, and I'm walking into ancient Greece, and I'm going to promote my Christianity to someone who's devoted to Athena. And I'm presenting the Bible. How does the person who believes Homer is true have a bigger burden of proof if I'm the one making the positive claim? If I'm the one saying Christianity is true and your religion is wrong, how does the opposing side have the biggest claim? So how can the atheist who doesn't believe in our book, who doesn't believe in God, have more to prove?
Cheers. Thanks for defending our position. That's how we feel
Oh.
exactly. It's because, just because, Christianity isn't true doesn't make Homer true. Just because Homer is false doesn't make Christianity true. And we're looking at everybody and saying, you both could be wrong.
That's cool, Keanu. Don't worry about it. I'm just going to call him Keanu as if he is Keanu, because why not?
Here, miracles are impossible, because if they're possible,
They don't have to say that.
you don't have to say that.
No, of course they don't have to say that.
You don't have to say that. You say it is possible for a man to be raised from the dead.
I can say that that's possible without thereby.
without saying, but you're
Other religions exist, Dinesh. You should know that. You were Indian or Hindu at some point.
saying, but
Without
this particular
thereby-
one didn't
without-
happen,
without
but the
thereby-
event is possible.
without thereby in any way telling us anything about whether it happened as reported to
Is
us.
it possible is it possible for the Red Sea to be parted?
Sure, why not?
It
Yeah,
is.
Okay.
Okay.
I mean,
Is
I'll
it
say-
possible
I'll say
for
yes,
a
But what does that?
Oh, my headset's about to die. Hold on. I'm gonna switch headsets. Hold on.
Do for us? Is it possible that Muhammad flew to heaven on a winged horse?
Okay, so here's the problem.
Checkmate.
Well, hold on. Yes or no? Is it-
Yes, of course it's
Of
possible.
course it's possible. So that means that, the miraculous events as described in Islam, you've got such a higher burden of proof than the Muslim does if you're having a debate with a Muslim.
But
because you have to say
I
that
am
that's
not
impossible.
I am not trying to prove the veracity of this or that miracle. I freely admit that I
And
can't do
I'm
that.
not trying to prove the veracity of this
But
or
you
that
can't
miracle.
disprove it either.
No, of course I can't disprove it.
Yeah,
Exactly,
that's not
Alex
possible.
just checkmated
That's like me
him.
saying,
by
that's
the
like
Yeah.
me saying,
I missed it. I
Um,
missed it.
I think that I don't
He's
know.
Should I
having
go
to-
back or?
So the point of the debate is he's having to prove the veracity of the Bible. When Alex brings up Islam, that's a perfectly good move. And now,
Yeah.
because Dinesh keeps wanting to go to is God true is the argument. That's not the argument. Is the Bible true is the argument.
So
and,
I was.
and Dinesh says, we believe in we as Christians believe in miracles, and Alex says, well, did Muhammad ride to heaven on a horse?
So Dan McCullen has an argument against prophecy, saying that if Christians accept prophecy as true, as in Jesus predicting that the temple is going to be destroyed, then we have to accept all prophecy. And I've been wanting to. I just don't know if I want to risk the copyright. I found it. By the way, Orson Welles, The Man Who Saw Tomorrow. I found the portion where he's talking about Osama bin Laden, and where he's talking about the bad guy, and he's talking about what happened on 9/11. I found that portion, and I'm like, I so want to watch it because my argument is, yeah, I believe prophecy is true. You don't have to be a Christian to be able to prophesize, and I want to play that just to be like, look, see, this can be interpreted as prophecy. That's just my own little bellywick. Sorry.
Take the Shakespearean example. I think that, spoiler alert,
Well, we don't need a Shakespearean example.
Romeo took the poison.
Let's take an actual.
And if you said, well, hold on, how do you know that that actually happened? And I said, well, you can't prove that it didn't.
well, let's pick an actual
A man dressed up as a bat gets all of my press.
example that pertains to Christianity. let's talk about something I raised earlier.
We've got about
Um,
5 minutes
right
before
back.
Q&A,
Okay,
by the
do
way.
you believe?
You're going to have to get used to asking questions that might make you a little bit uncomfortable.
Do you believe that there is life after death?
I don't know.
You don't have no idea.
Yeah, I'm agnostic on that.
So if I say that there's life after death, am I being unreasonable?
I don't think so.
Not at all.
It depends on your reasons.
It depends on my reasons, but
Yeah.
what I'm saying is if I were to tell you that there is no empirical way
Yeah.
to prove this one way or the other, my faith, let's say, that there's life after death is just as reasonable as someone who says there isn't.
Sure, it depends on what the reasons
No.
that are given are, of course, but sure, that's
We're talking about the reasons that are actually available. Not the person who's giving a reason may give the best or not
no, look,
the
it's
best reason.
pedantic, but I'm happy to say yes. I just want to be careful what I say because people might get the wrong impression of my beliefs. But yeah, sure. I mean, sure. We've got two people. One says life after death. One says not. They're both just as reasonable as each
They're
other.
both just as reasonable.
Sure. Yeah. That could be,
Okay,
that could be the
excellent.
case.
Okay, good. I wanted to clarify that point particularly because
What's
what
this
it
got to
really
do with the truth of the Bible?
well, all I am saying is that the claims of miracles, you and I are not going to be in a position to go back and see whether or not Jesus raised a man from the dead,
That's
right?
not all you said.
It's-
It's not all you're saying.
The
because
Christian is perfectly willing to take that on faith.
you think that did happen, and you're taking it on faith, and that's fine. Like
Yes.
more power to you. And in fact, I envy your ability to believe things despite what.
Well,
seems to
don't
me
you
like
take a lot of things
like
on faith?
Of course, yeah, absolutely.
Plenty of things.
What Alex just did right there is what Dinesh should be doing throughout the entire debate. Just admit the thing and move forward.
on
Yeah, well,
faith.
yeah, all the time.
So
the
all
time.
the things that you take on faith
Yeah.
are things that you think are not unreasonable, but the things that Christians take on faith are to you unreasonable because they can't be corroborated with historical
Is
evidence.
that what I said? I don't remember saying that.
It's more projection.
So are
More projection. Just projection, the argument. Projection, the debate.
the Christian beliefs on faith just as reasonable as everything that you believe on
It
faith?
can be depending on the reasons, but the veracity of the gospel accounts and the Old Testament.
Go ahead, BS.
Yeah, it depends on the reasons, but I think Dinesh is trying to pull the old conflation of what faith means in a religious sense versus faith in a naturalistic sense. And our trust, pistis, is based upon priors. Like you sit down in a chair, they always use the chair example. Oh, you have faith the chair's not going to break when you sit down. It's because I have a bunch of priors of 95+% of chairs I've sat in and haven't broke. But
Yeah, but me and you have argued about that before, where I'm like, the first time you do something, you have faith in something, you don't have a basis for trust there when it's a first time out.
that's true. But we also look and observe people around us. And so we get comfort by seeing other people successfully pull off what we're going to pull off. That also strengthens our pistis, our trust in the thing.
Well, I mean, let's think about Deconverted Man, who's an extreme skeptic. And I know I hurt his feelings a while back, and I want to apologize, Deconverted Man, if you're watching right now. I wasn't trying not to answer your questions. It's just you were giving me a gish gallop while I was watching a video that was really intense, and it was hard for me to answer your questions and the video's questions at the same time. Sorry about that. But he's an extreme skeptic. I mean, if you're that cynical and that skeptical where you trust nothing ever, that's a hard way to live. It's not as if some people don't live that way.
It would be considered reckless, and so which would be considered unreasonable.
I can't hear
so-
you.
Me,
I don't know if it's me or it's you.
I think it's just you. Your headphones suck.
Okay, no, you're back. You're back.
So what you're talking about, like if we're using zero prior probabilities from ourself, our own experience, or looking at others, or testing, or performing mathematical equations to see if stuff works out, or many different ways that we do things to establish trust, then it is considered reckless and unreasonable. That's why those people are called dumb usually, because they're doing things like, and when it comes to things like the resurrection, we have an extremely, from a naturalistic point, we have a 0% priors of dead things not staying dead. And even from a religious standpoint, if I'm reading the Bible, there's maybe 5 instances of resurrection, and I'm not including the Matthew zombies. But if I'm talking about Lazarus,
I
Jairus'
mean,
daughter, Elisha's kid,
If we're going to use the same defense that we're going to use for prophecy, which is that if prophecy is true in one, it can be true in other ones. That means that other tellings of resurrection could be true.
Okay. So let's weigh that against the
And you're gone
probability.
again.
Hello? Hello?
There you are. You're back.
I'm showing up on the bubble. But
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've been hearing you this whole time, BS.
okay, thanks. I was just gonna say, okay, if we're gonna say that and we can weigh priors on resurrection through other religions as well, does it outweigh the probabilities of people lying or being sincerely mistaken? And I'd say no, because people lying and being sincerely mistaken is an almost everyday occurrence, as opposed to people raising from the dead.
Yeah, but then again, that goes to the extreme skepticism of someone like Deconverted Man, where nothing's true. And I'm not shitting on Deconverted Man when I'm saying this. I truly feel bad for him that he has this cognitive skepticism about basic things. And I couldn't. I'm not lying. I could not survive that way. So I'm not shitting on someone with that kind of condition, but it that is a real thing that people do have, where even something that happened right before right before you were born, or before you had cognitive ability to understand things, and then if you get to Deconverted Man's level, where even your own thoughts, you don't know if those are your original thoughts, or your thoughts have been corrupted over time because of how memory changes. That's hard to live that way.
I don't know if it's Deconverted Man you're thinking of. From what I know about Deconverted Man, is he is a staunch advocate for logic.
Well, I
And
mean,
so
he
if,
is.
if nothing else, that's what he kind of boils his life model after, which is a very actually reasonable way to do things.
I don't know if the extreme skepticism that he ascribes to is tenable in a real world. And judging by what he says about the way that he handles things, I'm guessing it's not. I'm guessing in relationships, it is hard to deal with someone with that level of distrust.
Maybe you're heard stuff I haven't, but that doesn't strike me as Deconverted Man.
Well, I'm basing it on what he said about the way that the mind works and the way that thought works. And
Well, maybe he's like me. Maybe he's been burned by Christianity so badly. And when I mean Christianity, I'm talking about the brand of Christianity I came out of, that he's been burned by Christianity so badly that he's just totally
thank you, Thomas.
put off by religion because he doesn't know what to believe anymore. Maybe that's what you're talking about, but I don't know.
So for me, and I came to Christianity late in life, and I came to Catholicism late in life. I can't deny that. But even if we add in the factors of, I live in a Catholic, a majority Catholic community, and I was baptized Catholic when I was a baby, and I left the church when I was 12, and I came back when I was 33. If we do the Deconverted Man thing and say that, well, that's cultural bias, and I don't know, whatever influence going to mass in Spanish when you only speak English gives you, whatever that is, help me make my decision at 33, or influence my decision at 33. That still doesn't say whether or not Christianity is my belief or disbelief in Christianity. Doesn't say whether or not Christianity is actually true, whether or not the events actually happen.
Well, that's not what they're talking about right now. They're talking about whether something is reasonable or not. And what Dinesh is trying to get Alex into a corner is saying, like, naturalistic thinking and supernaturalistic thinking are both equally reasonable. And I would push back on that hard, because imagine if me and you were flipping a coin,
Mm-hmm.
and I say I believe that it's going to land on heads, and you say I believe it's going to land on the edge. Which one's being more reasonable? I have a higher probability of it hitting the heads than you, than it landing on sideways on its edge.
But there's a problem with the way that you're arguing that, and the way that Alex is arguing it, which is, we're talking about something that did or did not happen in the past. So the question changes slightly. And again, I'm not saying this as I'm not saying this as a defense of the position, because it doesn't get you there. What I'm saying is that something really did happen. regardless of whether we agree with it or not. Either Jesus existed or Jesus didn't. That's one. Either Jesus was resurrected or wasn't. That's two. Either Jesus was God or he wasn't. That's three. And then we can keep doing this for other ones. But if this is true, then there's only a this is true or this is false. You narrow it down to a binary yes or no, and then it's faith on which one it is. It comes down to a faith issue because
That's
you can't prove the resurrection.
this is why it's perfectly analogous to the example I just gave with the coin. Because if you ask Bart Ehrman, go ask any historian, they will tell you that the historical method is so largely based on probabilities. It's not even funny. So
But
when you are researching the past, it is akin to the same methodology of flipping a coin because we're looking at probabilities.
okay, so here's a real story that really did happen to me. Okay, this is real. There were 3 witnesses. One of them's dead now, but whatever. 3 witnesses. We drove off a fucking expressway and we landed on a plank of wood and we did a swervy thing. 3 cars behind us did the exact same thing. If we hadn't done it, we'd all have been dead. We came back the next day to verify what happened because we were so like, how is that even possible? And sure enough, the part of the bridge that was down was now cornered off, and there was construction, and there was 2 planks that the trucks were using to navigate this fucking gap. That's an incredible story, and it's not the kind of story that lends credibility to the person who says it. Every time I tell that story, I know the person's looking at me like I'm a liar because it's not an easy story to believe, but either it really happened or it didn't. And it did happen, even if probability says it's impossible.
But that's the thing. If we're just using a historical method, we can never know for certain. That's why it's using probabilities. And so in your case, like, yes, the story is outlandish and crazy, but you even used the historical method yourself in verifying your own event because you went and saw that there was archaeological evidence that the event did happen, which was the broken part of the road. So you went back, investigated, found archaeological evidence that supported the claim that you yourself went through, your personal experience. So you could even build more trust than just your personal experience alone.
But the Christian would argue, and I'm not doing this right now, but I'm just saying the Christian would argue, well, the voices of the Bible are that witness, that extra witness that you need.
But the testimonial isn't the same as the archaeological. And that's the thing. Like, archaeology has a harder time lying than people do.
Yeah, but you can't prove you can't archaeologically prove a resurrection. Literally, you can't prove it. It's literally the body's not there.
Well, okay, here's a funny thing William and Craig always says. You can disprove it. If we found the bones of Jesus, we've disproved that the resurrection happened, right? But in my case, or Mythicist's case, that would actually disprove their claim that Jesus never existed in the first place, too. So you'd actually be killing 2 birds with one stone, except for, like, they'd both be kind of upset, you know?
Okay, but my question is, why would you, if Jesus really existed, which I'm not getting into, I think he was a conglomerate, to be honest with you, but that's neither here nor there. If a single person of Jesus really existed, why would you even expect to find his bones? Because what generally happened to crucified people by Rome was they were shoved in a communal grave.
You wouldn't expect to find them, but even if we did find bones, we couldn't verify they were his anyway.
And also the Lisa, that's actually what would have happened is they would have been left for the stray dogs, and they would have been eaten, and their bones would have been defecated out. There wouldn't even be a remnant of the person who's crucified.
In some cases they're mass graves too, though. But you're right.
So anyway,
prophecy, I think, is unreasonable to believe in. Not life after death. That's fine. You can believe that. Not like, a man called Jesus rose from the dead. Fine. But the idea that the Bible comports with reality either in mythological sense, in an allegorical sense, in a moral sense, or in a in the sense of
Let's-
history.
Look at Alex trying to bring it back.
Let's talk about the moral sense, since you raised it, and
Fine.
we'll just talk
I
about
want to make
briefly.
sure we've
and go
got
to-
time for Q&A. But
I love how he finally picks a version of truth to argue for at the very end of the debate.
look, I can reread the text if you like. The Amalekites.
well, let's not.
I feel like
Although
Alex
he's like,
looks
no,
like
no,
he's-
no, not the Amalekites. Yeah. He just starts. We all know where he's going, and then she's like, no, 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 not that one.
I felt like that pause was Alex questioning his life. Like, what am I doing right now? We're almost done.
Talk about the Amalekites in part because here's the problem. For most Christians,
But it never happened, so it doesn't matter. Try that
the
one.
Old
Let's try it on for
Testament
size.
is different than the New and is seen through the light of the New. So
But the
I'm
God-
not.
the
you-
God
if
is
you
the
want to,
same.
if you want to go to, Dennis Prager, who has written about this from a Jewish perspective.
Hello. Hi. This is Heresy Calling 101. Yes, you just heard a heresy. Yes. No, you're going to be okay. Just take the bag, put the bag on yourself. Once you're breathing, then put the bag on the person next to you. Put your head between your legs and prepare to die.
Was written about the Deuteronomy, the Book of
So,
Kings, the
wait a minute.
Amalekites.
So we can.
What heresy did we just hear?
He denied the Old Testament, which is Marcionism.
Oh, okay.
Bring him out
What he
later,
considers
but-
to be the justifiable massacre of the Canaanites. I don't really want to go there because,
Well, I know why you don't want to go there.
well,
Because
the
it's
reason I don't want to go
unjustifiable.
there, the Old Testament is full of horrific.
Do not insert your modern morality into the Old Testament, Dinesh. That's all you got to do. That's all you got to say. That's all you got to be.
It's funny because Dinesh is like, Alex brought up morality. He's like, oh, you want to talk about morality? And then now he doesn't want to talk about morality all of a sudden. He's like, oh, geez.
Dinesh has not proven anything on that. He hasn't even proven the Earth exists basically at this point. Which is a video I want to do for Dan McKellen. I want to do one of those videos where it's like things that the Bible proves, and then just have it be like the Earth, and then like Israel exists, and then I don't know, like a third stupid thing that's like obviously real, and then have Dan get all mad.
Massacres.
Yes, and
that is
massacres-
hold on.
massacres which are ordained. by God.
Massacres which appear to be ordained by Yahweh directly.
Sure.
Agreed. And
Well,
which
why
are
are you
which
saying
are-
Yahweh instead of God? Why are you sort of
because
trying to distance yourself from the God of the Old Testament?
well, I'm not trying to distance myself. I'm simply trying to say that any reader,
So why is that the first time you've used the word Yahweh in this conversation?
I'll tell you why. Because there is a movement within the Bible itself that you are
It's called progressive revelation. If you're going to make the argument, learn the argument.
completely missing.
To be fair to Dinesh, he's giving your argument here, Alpha. He's trying to recontextualize the old through the new.
So then give that one singular argument.
Well, now it looks
Don't
like he's
do
farting,
this.
sniffing his
but-
finger.
But,
Okay, guys, I've gotten a headache. Dinesh has given me a headache. Thank you very much, Dinesh. So
Sorry,
I'm,
Lisa.
that's okay. That's okay. Most of
We're
this,
almost done. We're only going to go about 10 more minutes anyway, and I'm not going to play this again unless I play the Christian mocking him on a different stream later on in the future.
okay. I'll stay then.
Okay. BS, are you good for about 10, 15 more minutes, Max?
That's fine.
Do not think that I have come
Hold
to
on, hold on,
abolish
hold
the
on.
law
Let me-
or the
let me-
prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter, not the least stroke of a pen, will by any means disappear from the law until everything.
I love how it's still Alex giving the Christian response because Dinesh never gets around to the actual argument.
Is accomplished. Therefore, anyone who sets aside one of the least of these commands and teaches accordingly will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever
Alex is so prepared for every single counter argument that he's giving them himself.
practices and teaches
Well,
these
look,
commands.
okay, I was wrong. That Dinesh does have notes. They're just on the floor. He's just left him on the floor there.
I think he just
will be
gave
called
up maybe like 2 minutes after this debate because
Who gave up, Dinesh or Alex? Because they could go either way.
Dinesh.
in the kingdom of heaven. Jesus said that in the Sermon on the Mount, referring to his fulfillment of Old Testament prophecy and law.
Referring to his fulfillment of Old Testament prophecy.
Old
Look,
Testament law. And what I'm referring to here is an Old Testament law, which you're now trying to distance yourself
No,
from and say that it's sort of
I'm
different to the
saying-
New
I'm saying
Testament.
that you're
That's not
miss-
what Jesus thought.
I'm saying you're missing the developmental track of the Bible that is obvious to any intelligent reader. Let me give you one example of what I'm
But
talking
tell
about.
me about the Amalekites.
Now he called him stupid too. Any dum-dum could get this, Alex. What the hell's wrong with you?
The reason why you don't understand what I'm saying is because I'm so smart.
Tell me what the
It's
development.
not about the Amalekites.
of the
It's about the
genocide
way that the
is.
whole story of the Bible.
You brought him up. You said, go, let's move to the moral argument. And he brought in the moral argument. What did you think he was going to do? Was Alex going to go, hey, you know what? That Sermon on the Mount thing, that was great. Let's talk about that for an hour.
Why don't we just talk about how nice Jesus is for an hour, right?
Changes in tone and
Keanu wants to see what's in Dinesh's notebook. It's just scribbling.
mood and message. I mean,
I just gotta say this. He's more Gish Gallopy than Dwayne Gish.
Yeah, he's pretty bad in this one.
for example,
Help me out here. Like, just tell me where any way you like. Tell me where this fits into that trajectory.
Okay,
Tell
I'll
me
tell you
this
where.
fits in.
We have just a couple minutes, guys, so let's wrap it up before the Q&A.
Just tell me.
the under
I know that that's a real thing that they wanted to get to the Q&A, they never get to it. But I feel like the hosts were like, let's just save Journess and Christianity and just kill it here.
Tell me where
underlying,
this
the
fits in.
underlying message of the Old Testament is an eye for an eye. The Amalekites are the enemies of the Israelites. The Israelites will crush them with the same venom that the Amalekites would have crushed the Israelites. That's called an eye for an eye.
Including
Now,
the children,
hold on.
The children, the infants,
The children,
the
the
cattle,
infants,
the sheep, the camels, the donkeys.
Yeah, that Dennis Prager says yes, but my point is different. You will not find that spirit
not
at
enough,
all in the New Testament. In fact, in the New Testament,
Go ahead.
That's not true. Luke 19:27. I love when people bring this up. Oh, it's always the Old Testament God that wants to kill everybody, but Luke 19:27 points out that Jesus wants his followers to kill non-followers.
you've got a spirit
Right.
of forgiveness.
You know,
So what
Jesus
I'm getting
says, I have not come to bring peace, but a sword. What the fuck is that all about except killing people, Dinesh?
Well, that's not killing people. That's talking about dividing families between each other. But yeah.
at is to
That's
pretend
better.
like
do
you
is to
don't
forget
have
yourself
this.
of I mean, seriously.
Christianity is named after Christ. It's based on Christ as a fulfillment of the Old Testament.
I feel like right there at that argument, there's a heresy about to happen and he just doesn't get to it. Like he was, do you get what I'm saying? Like he's like, Christianity is the name of, you know what I mean? I feel like there's like, he was going somewhere that I guess he thought better of.
I can't even guess where he's going anymore because he takes so many twists and turns.
But what does fulfillment mean? It actually means transcendence. In Abraham's time, blood
No,
sacrifices are
No,
normal.
it doesn't. Nope. What is fulfillment? Fulfillment means carrots, everybody.
No, fulfillment means fulfillment, and
No.
transcendence means
Fulfillment-
transcendence.
Fulfillment means having a good time on a Saturday night with your friends. That's what it means.
Right?
That can't
When
be right,
Christ
man.
comes as a sacrifice, Christ is the lamb. The point is, those blood sacrifices
That
aren't
can't be
necessary
right.
anymore.
Listen, I'm-
That's
I'm-
the Christian reading. And you keep filibustering me because you know
No, he's not. He's only saving you. He's let you talk for 2 fucking hours. He's only saving you from embarrassing yourself. I'm okay.
that the Bible is showing a movement in a direction, and to miss the movement is to miss the Bible. Let's look at
I'm-
God
no,
in the
no,
Bible.
hold on,
Let me
hold
make one
on.
quick
No,
point
no,
about God in the
there's
Bible.
nothing quick about what you're doing, Dinesh. There's nothing quick about what you're doing. I need to be allowed to respond to what you're saying.
Be-
And
be-
I'm getting sick when
You're cross-examining me on the justice of smiting the Amalekites. Honestly, I don't see any justice in it, but I do agree that was the eye for an eye.
And yet, what does any of this have to do with the Bible being true? You could.
Oh, because now we switched to the topic of is it morally true? And now he just conceded the debate in that regard too. So he just lost again by saying the Bible is not morally true.
ethic
Eye
of the
for an
Old
eye.
Testament that is repudiated and transformed and transfigured in the New.
I've had this conversation so many times, most recently with William Lane Craig. At least he had the gall to just tell me that, yes, that was a moral thing for God to do. I get sick to death of people hand waving away this genocide by some vague reference to the fact that Jesus came along to do something which somehow kind of undoes the immorality of it. Like, this is not an eye for an eye. This is a genocide of combatant men, innocent women, and children, and animals. Saul is punished by God for not killing all of the animals. Like,
That is actually a ludicrous misreading of what's happening.
let me just
with
make
Saul.
It's not a misreading.
You're being ludicrous, bro.
There's
That
only
is
two.
not a misreading. That is exactly what the fucking book says.
So what I said in my review is that there's only two, in my opinion, there's only two legitimate responses. Either A, you do the William Lane Craig divine command theory, it is moral, or you do what every other reasonable Christian who knows archaeology says, which is this didn't happen. So it's telling something else. It's telling something about differentiating groups, because the actual group that was destroyed actually interbred with the Jewish people. There's no way you could separate them out. So it's doing something completely different. Those are your only two options. Either it's not literal, or it's literal and it's okay. Those are your only two options if you're going to argue moral truth at this junction.
Well, the eye for the eye excuse doesn't even work either, because this is all premeditated. So the Israels were the first to strike in all these different towns and villages that they went to conquer. It's not like the Amalekites went and beat up some of their, people, and then so they came back in revenge. No, they were just sitting there, living there, minding their business, and these people came and took over their city.
Other than divine command theory, or it didn't happen, this is not a literal story. What other option, BS, I'm going to ask you first, what other option is there to justify this as true in some sense?
You talking morally?
I'm saying anything. Pick a version of truth.
No.
What truth could this be other than those two?
Let's grant that the archaeological record does somehow demonstrate, even though we both agree it doesn't. Like, if it's historically true, that doesn't. It makes the moral argument even worse, because now that you have a harder time as a Christian to explain the immorality, you're going to have to fall back on DCT, which has its own problems. But as we mentioned, there isn't that much historical evidence to prove that they're true in the first place. So,
Lisa, do you have an other version of truth that could be argued for in this instance? I just don't see one.
No, it didn't happen. Okay. But the book said it happened. So if you take the book at face value, which I don't, then you have to go with divine command, or you have to say God is immoral. Those are your only two options. If you take the book
wait.
at face value.
It could be what they were accusing Dinesh of skirting with or flirting with, Marcionism.
Well, could they also? Is there an argument there for that our morality is wrong and we're not? How can I put it? Not that not that our morality is separate, but that our morality is the mistake. That us thinking this is the wrong thing to do is just wrong, and this is a justification for it without divine command theory. Like, this is just not a bad thing. Is there an argument there to be made outside of being a terrible monster and being a bad person?
There would be something, and I have heard that argument. So the proof text for that would be the the divorce laws, when Jesus says, Moses has told you about divorce, but I tell you, and he corrects Moses's mistake. The tactic would be to say that Joshua and Moses are attributing these genocides to God when they're not actually divinely commanded from God, which would open up a different can of worms down the road.
Yeah, which I don't think Dinesh is capable of handling anyway.
Can I?
Let me just make a quick point. Let me just make a quick point. I have to make this point.
Okay.
I've got to read the text from Joshua as well.
Okay, and then we'll check in with the audience, because we're probably. I think the audience is going to agree that we want this to keep.
There's no way that I'm misreading this text. We know that this is what's happening in the slaughter of AI. That's a type of Canaanite. In Joshua, we're told that when Israel had finished killing all of the men in Ai, in the fields and in the wilderness, where they had chased them, and when every one of them had been put to the sword, the Israelites returned to Ai and killed those who were in it. That is to say, that we're told that this is just because the promised land was inhabited, and God, he's allowed to do this. So because the Israelites want that land, they have to go and chase out the Ai. So they chase them into the wilderness. They chase after them. They slaughter them in the wilderness. They then turn around, come back into the city, and kill who's left. Who's left if the combatants have run away? The women and the children. This is intolerable, and I cannot have it
Well, hold on,
simply,
hold on. I mean,
simply waved away. with
All right,
reference to
hang
the
on.
character of Jesus.
Let me
are-
just for a second.
It can't happen. It can't keep happening.
Let's pause
You're completely blind to the irony of what you're saying.
Dinesh, can we pause for just a second?
Yeah.
Okay, everyone who wants, guys, we're going to get.
Invented the just war tradition, according to which the slaughter of women and children is out of bounds. Prior to Christianity,
But that has nothing to do with
With the Bible, yeah. I think Dinesh made a huge mistake steering in this direction, or maybe he didn't know that O'Connor had just got off of talking to William Lake Craig about this stuff, and so he's like sharp as a tack on the subject.
no one thought this. Everybody did it.
No one thought this. No one.
I
Not
never
anyone in
thought-
history.
I never thought I would say this, but I finally found someone as terrible as Armando Calvo. I never thought I'd say that. Anybody
And
who's
everybody-
watched Logic knows who I'm talking about.
Today does it everywhere in the world, and we do it too. The bombing of Dresden, the bombing of Hamburg, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the
Congratulations. So just everybody's equally evil, so it doesn't make it bad now? Is that the argument here?
He's arguing for atheism here. There's no need for a guidance from a god. We can just do it ourselves.
incineration of women and children is the normal course of war. I just watched the World War II documentary in which they interview an old bomber, US bomber pilot.
Wait a minute.
and he
Wait
goes,
a minute.
I would-
Okay, that's because you fucking moron. When we're talking about war in the modern sense, we're talking about you cannot separate men, women, and children. And I know that's not an excuse for, taking out women and children, but it's just a fact of life. You can't separate the men from the women and children, especially when you have powerful weapons like H-bombs and stuff like that. But when you're talking about all the men of war going out and then the children of Israel slaughtering all the men of war and then coming back and slaughtering everybody in the city who must be old men, women, and children, then there's no reason for the children of Israel to return to the city to specifically kill those people. There's no reason for them to do that. You fucking moron.
Yeah, and in this case, when it goes to his eye for an eye defense, like the male combatants aren't a group of thugs going around terrorizing people. They are the men who are being called to defend their families. And so it's a little bit different. He's trying to frame the narrative, and Craig did the same thing. Like, they're the worst of the worst. They're the bad guys. But if a bunch of people are marching up to your city and they're going to say, I'm going to steal your property and kill your family, the men should stand up and be like, this is our manly duty to be the combatants. It's not like they're the evil people for doing so. They're actually the good people for defending their family and their homesteads.
Well, also, and I'm not really answering for you two, but Dinesh himself doesn't seem to have a clue about ancient warfare. For one thing, the women and children would be separated out beforehand. They have sanctuary cities. There's escape routes. That's why siege warfare was so effective, is because you don't allow the non-combatants to escape, which means that they're going to be starved out. And so you have more pressure to surrender. Also, the non-combatants, once you actually enter the city, women were usually trained to either shoot a bow and arrow or use a kind of like a gardening weapon to protect themselves from, the R word. So like it's not as if what he's describing as ancient warfare is ancient warfare. Lisa is right on that. It's not dropping bombs. Although there are cannons and fires. Fires would kill random people as well, but it's one-on-one personal warfare. You would actually have civilians would line up for some of these battles, and they would watch the battle like watching a TV show, or because you could be so distant, and the combatants would know who was civilians and who was the individuals. So Dinesh doesn't have any idea of how ancient warfare actually worked based on his defense here, but I don't think he's actually making that implication.
No.
I just think he's trying to find a way out of his own trap that he set for himself.
Yeah, he's not, because if we listen a little bit earlier, he's trying to give credit for modern warfare tactics and modern quote unquote just war tactics to Christianity. And he's trying to move it away from Old Testament morality and then bring it back to Jesus made everything better.
Augustine understood Jesus better than anyone. So therefore, and it's like, okay, that's fine. Augustine had great morality and it might have been inspired by Jesus. That doesn't answer the events that supposedly happened in the Old Testament. I mean, that's the problem with Dinesh's argument.
Yeah, which is still part of the Bible. So Alex is on point trying to defend it, and he's just
building. They said,
sorry about that.
No, he's just trying to move it away from the hard topic.
20,000 women and children, and this guy kind of breaks down. You can watch this on Netflix, guys. So what I'm getting at is the Christian morality that repudiates it. Now you're standing on a Christian mountain and acting like, whoa, look at these Christians. They taught you to talk like this.
These people did not teach me to think like that.
They did.
These people were listening to their God who was telling them to slaughter innocent women.
That's right. The the ancient Israelites were, but the ancient Israelites are not what taught you. What taught you is the 1,000-year tradition of the early Christian church.
Which came a bit too late for the Amalekites.
It came a bit too late for the Amalekites.
Even though I like where Dinesh is trying to go, I love Alex's counter. He's like, okay, fine, but it comes way too late for these people.
It's keeping it on point, because a 1,000-year-old ancient tradition of Christianity has nothing to do with the Bible and whether it's true. It's tradition after the fact.
So the traditional Christian response to this, not just Catholic, this is Orthodox, this is everything else, is that without the Catholics, we use the word magisterium, but you don't have to think about it that way. Without the guiding hand of interpretation of holy tradition, you can interpret these passages any way that you want, including as commands to do evil things to your enemies. That's why you need holy tradition to tell you that's not what this is teaching. That's the whole point of the Catholic and Orthodox and Chalcedonian and Oriental oral tradition, is that it prevents you from misinterpreting it in the wrong way.
Except for when all the people are using that interpretation to start wars with everybody else.
Well,
the Christian history is full of too, right?
No, but that again, that's not Catholic history. But the Catholic ones would be the Crusades and stuff like that. That would not be the War of the Roses or all the other Christian. Anything Protestant, just you got to throw it out. And that's part of the problem with Protestantism is that it muddies the waters for good debates, because you have to deal with. It's like, okay, so there are real problems within the Christian community, within people who misinterpret the Bible or use it for terrible things. And then you have the Protestants who throw away the tradition that regulates all of this material. And so now anything can be interpreted any way that you want. And now you have a real problem on your hands, because there's stuff in there that you can take to interpret, to be commands to do terrible things to people. So it's not as simple. I know you're trying to make a knock against religion altogether, but it's not as simple as that. You have, even in Buddhist, and remember, Buddhism is slightly atheist according to some people. You have, these like justifications for war. You have all this kind of same stuff. it's a philosophy, but it still has these same issues. And if you don't have the guiding books, and you just have the sayings of Buddha, you can justify anything. It's not as simple as taking the safeties off and because it's religion, because you don't believe in it, it doesn't matter. No, like these are real theological and philosophical issues that are in the minds of people, and are always going to be in the minds of people, whether it's a Confucian or Buddhism or name your religion.
I'm not disagreeing with you when it comes to the confusion amongst Protestantism, but I'm saying that the Catholics and the Orthodox and a magisterium doesn't get a pass as the sacred interpreters of the text either, because there's been a lot of bad stuff happening under their guidance as well. I'm talking about the marriage of church and state all the way up to King James and the Church of England and everything that transpired from that point, which is a relatively recent, in the whole scope of the 2,000-year history.
Well, I think if you're going to have that, and I don't want to go down too deep into this rabbit hole, but I think if you're going to have that argument, and I'm not pretending to know this history. We'd have to know the history of the Papal States when the Pope was actually in charge of a nation, how he ran his wars, because he did have wars. He did have an army. So how he ran his wars, how the justifications, and the magisterium doesn't exist for all time. Don't let Catholics fool you into that. The magisterium was created at a certain point, but what we call the magisterium, the ruling body, existed. So you have to see what the governing body decided with the Bible as its guide, with Holy Tradition as its guide. The Orthodox have argued, some say successfully, that the Catholics during the Papal State period, this is after the breakoff from Orthodoxy, misinterpreted the Bible. So the guide, the training wheels that's supposed to keep you from doing evil shit, ran off the trail, ran off the rack, ran off the track. So,
well, even to a lesser degree, when we're talking about the Protestant Reformation and Luther, he got pissed off about the indulgences, which was a product of the magisterium's interpretation.
Well, we still have indulgences today, and we still believe they're true. So,
not in the same way. Paying money for.
But that wasn't the magisterium teaching that. That was specifically one apocryphal story and anecdote of. So here's the problem with that story that nobody talks about. This happened in Italy, and Luther didn't speak Italian. So I don't know. And then the guy who's saying it in Germany is doing it without the permission of the bishop, or without. There's like an actual history there where you can find out about the two people, because there's more than one person who was saying this. The people who were saying it weren't doing it with the sanction of the bishop or the pope or even whoever it is was in charge of them. They were just saying it. They were being scam artists.
Well, it's
It
true,
isn't
but
all of them.
he pinned a 95 thesis to the door. Like, it's
That
not
didn't
like
actually happen. Yeah, that didn't
Well,
actually happen either.
there was 95 complaints, whether it was actually
Yeah.
pinned to a door or not. But my point is that I don't know all of them by heart, but I know some of them I would probably side with Luther on, and the odds of them all being wrong or being mistranslated or misinterpreted is very low, or
Well, I have
it's very high, whatever they are.
I have a 6-part or 7-part series where I actually read all of Luther's 95 Theses. Please go watch that. B.S. Lewis, you could also learn from that.
Were the Israelite armies not instructed by the God that you believe in?
They were instructed by God.
And they were instructed to do things which you would now consider to be immoral, yes?
Absolutely.
So God has commanded them to
How does he fall for that? How does Dinesh fall for something that easy?
do something which you now consider to be immoral, whether or not
Go ahead, BS. Go ahead.
He's just painting himself into a corner, and Alex is just so good at what he does.
Hold on. To be immoral, because of the latest developments of Christian ethics, God himself has told us that we must abandon our intuition, that the slaughter of women and children, and by the way, when it's unnecessary in those instances to slaughter them.
Hi, I'm Nicole Hockley from Sandy Hook Promise. I know this is hard to hear,
Hi,
but it's
Nicole.
important.
Agree, disagree, neutral, strongly disagree.
Well,
no, I picked the wrong one. No,
You're
now
gonna
I'm
get
get
a
the
bunch of-
commercial forever.
A bunch of charities now.
well, I don't view it that way. This is how I view it. let's put it this way: even in the ancient world, divine revelation comes into a primitive, barbaric world.
Okay, now you're arguing for progressive revelation again, which you've hit on like 4 times, 3 times in this debate. You should have just stayed there.
Which is full of a lot of really bad guys.
And God says, keep going.
No,
Keep
God,
it up.
God,
You're
God
doing
does not,
such a
God
good
does
job.
not, God does not say keep going. But what God does is and again, this is called, trying to get the
I do feel that was unnecessary because at this point it's clear that Dinesh lost. So I don't even know if Alex had to chide him one more time.
point of what is happening. There's slavery in this world, in the ancient world, and it is true. The Bible doesn't come in and go, we denounce slavery, we denounce the killing of women and children. It doesn't do
Does
that.
the opposite.
It actually immerses itself into an existing, admittedly barbaric culture.
This is bad. I have to go.
Okay.
So this
Good.
has been
This
fun.
is good. Yeah. Thank you, BS. Thank you, Lisa. I'm gonna go ahead and end the stream too. I have to work tomorrow, so this was fun.
All right, bye,
Good night.
Lisa.
End stream.